We're live.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's Providence School Board meeting. I am calling tonight's meeting to order. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is the roll call. Mr. Kushner, if you could please call the roll.
Yes, sir. President Thomas.
Present.
Vice President Garcia.
Present.
Dr. Santow.
Present.
Mr. Escobar. Mr. Escobar. Mr. Escobar is absent. Dr. Goldberg.
Present.
Mr. Abiemi. Mr. Abiemi. Mr. Abiemi is absent. Mr. Nunez.
Present.
Mr. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Mohangabo.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next on our agenda is the superintendent's comment. Superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As you're aware, our community turnaround action plan has many goals and metrics for how that we can build a school system around our students. And of course, because this is always asked, of course, we use data to track our progress on the way to meeting those goals. When we reviewed the mid-year assessment for PPSD students in grades K through 8, we had some very encouraging data showing progress in the areas of math, English language arts, and in reading. In math, the mid-year assessment showed 21% more K through 8 students are meeting or partially meeting expectations for their grade level. That's compared to the beginning of the school year. The number of students in grades K through 8 meeting or exceeding expectation in ELA more than tripled during the interim assessment. We were only 10% at the beginning of the school year. We are now at 35%. And in grades 1 through 8 have all met or exceeded the independent reading growth goals. From this point, at this point of the school year, kindergarten students showed a 33% increase in reading growth compared to last year. We know the job is not done. We can't pat ourselves in the back because of the work we've done. But we still have a lot of work to do. And I think it's really, really important to celebrate our terrific teachers and hardworking students for the progress they've made during this difficult school year. We need to let them know that their work is important and it's appreciated. So we're not patting ourselves in the back, but we are making growth, and we have to acknowledge that. I also want to know that we have about 3,000 students enrolled already for summer programming. So we will be working all year round to help close the achievement gap. I will continue to look forward to working together with school board members and the entire community to keep building on this positive momentum. And soon enough, when we look up and look back a few years, we're going to see that all these small wins have ended up to being a huge impact in Providence Public Schools. So continue having the faith, continue working with us, continue challenging us so we can continue delivering for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next on our agenda is an approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion has been made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second?
Mr. President, I think we need to move to amend the agenda because there is one item on our agenda published on our website that's showing here that is not, for reasons I'm not entirely sure of, on the Secretary of State's official agenda for tonight.
Is that
That is number 21.
item number
So
21?
we need to vote to amend the agenda before we approve it.
Is there a motion to amend the agenda to not include item number 21? Motion's been made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Santel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we can approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion's been made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Santel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Santel, for the note. Next on our agenda is public comment, right to be heard. And we have a number of folks signed up this evening for public comment. And I want to give everyone an opportunity to speak at length. We are going to ask folks to please keep their comments to 3 minutes or less. Okay? Mr. Kushner, if you could call our first person signed up for public comment.
Yes, sir. First person was Sheila Miranda. Sheila Miranda here.
If Ms. Miranda appears before the end of public comment, we will ask her to come forward. Who do you have next on public comment?
Next submitted was Suzanne Sutton. Suzanne Sutton.
Yeah, I see Ms. Sutton coming forward.
Here?
Yeah, you can come right up here next to Ms. Shanahan. Ms. Sutton, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please begin when you're ready.
Should I speak into this?
Yes, right into that microphone. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. I'm Suzanne Sutton. My family and I live in east side of Providence. We've been homeschooling my son since he was born. He's 6 years old now. He's been registered with you guys as a homeschooler under kindergarten since last fall. I'm here to sort of give you a overview of kind of what we do every single week at home so that you guys can know that we're doing an awful lot and that we don't really need any more resources or guidance or structure from the school district as it pertains to our homeschooling curricula. Every single week, he goes to my mother-in-law's for a very structured literature course. He does reading comprehension, all of the basic first grade literature books that you would find in a public school, in addition to the hundreds that we take from the library every single month. And then he does a mathematics and art course as well. He goes to my mother-in-law, into my mother's house as well, twice a week. She's a 25-year veteran of the Los Angeles Unified School District, and she does a very rigorous structured science curriculum with him, complete with nature journaling and the science journaling, all of the projects and bells and whistles of a full science curriculum at the first grade or higher level. When he's with me, he does all of his phonics. He's done both kindergarten level phonics courses and both first grade phonics levels twice. He does 2 different kinds of math curricula. And since I am a accomplished calligrapher, as something I just do, he does a lot of penmanship with me that includes our English Roman letters, as well as the entire Japanese kana, because we are also learning Japanese. So he has that in terms of his curriculum, and we're doing an entire Kodomo challenge having to do with that, which is a very well-regarded enrichment program monthly from Japan that's geared towards preschoolers and kindergartners. So he's getting an integrated Japanese and kindergarten to first grade level coursework. And when we're slacking off, he goes to violin once a week, swim lessons once a week, t-ball twice a week, Aikido, and he has obviously my Enrich Folks co-op group. That's a normal week. That's not including all of the field trips that we do. So we're packed in for what we do with him. He's at or above, well above in some ways, the kindergarten level in terms of what we do for his schooling. And I think if I had additional restrictions on me in terms of what I was doing with his schooling, it wouldn't be to his service. So I wanted to let you guys know that because we're doing awesome.
and I really appreciate your concern, but we're all set.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Mr. Kushner, who do we have signed?
Next on the list, Doctor, is Ashanti Gonzalez. Ashanti Gonzalez.
Ms. Gonzalez, thank you for joining us.
Okay, Ms. Gonzalez couldn't make it tonight, so one of her fellow students is here.
Okay, so is each student, are each of you going to speak?
Yes.
Okay, so here's what we'll do. I'm gonna have each of you state your full name for the record. Okay, and then we're gonna give each of you 3 minutes to speak. Okay, so you guys decide who wants to go first. State your full name, school that you attend, and grade.
My name is Luis Mario Garcia. I go to Juanita Sanchez and I'm in 11th grade.
11th grade. Okay.
Hi, my name is Rosalind Argueto. I go to Juanita Sanchez and I'm an 11th grader.
Can I just get your first name again? I'm sorry.
Rosalind,
Okay.
so we'll start. So good afternoon, everybody.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I first would like to thank Lindsay and Alan.
Russell, could you just hit that button? Ms. Shannon, can you make sure that the button is on so we can hear it? Press it. Oh, there you go. There you go. Yep. All right. Take it away.
So I would like to thank Lindsay and Alan for providing us with the information on how to get here and what time the meeting would be starting. At Juanita Sanchez, our civics class for our Generation Citizen project, we chose to improve mental health support in our school. Our class did research, and here are some of our findings.
According to the National Association of Mental Health Workers, the ratio of students to social workers should be 1 for every 250 students. Here at JSEC, the ratio is 1 social worker for 380 students. Our social worker was here 3.5 days a week, but now is only here 2 half days of the week. The district in Providence is down 5 social workers for its 22,000 students. One of the root cause in these recent years is COVID pandemic, which caused isolation. According to the social worker, the number of referrals in our school has gone up. There were 20 to 30 referrals a year before COVID. Now there's 50 plus referrals a year. Because of these reasons, we request more support for our mental health in schools. Thank you for requesting our request.
Nice job. Nice job. If the two of you could hang tight a little bit until we get to the school board comments. There's a couple of things that I just want to add to what you gave us here that I think would be helpful. Okay. Is there anything else that either of you would like to add?
No, that'd be all.
You guys did an excellent job. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Next person to speak is Jennifer Jermosin. Jennifer?
If Jennifer appears, Mr. Kushner, before the end of public comment, we'll bring her in.
Next would be Jonathan Zavala. Jonathan Zavala. Can't copy.
Okay. Mr. Savala, thank you for joining us, and thank you for bringing some of your colleagues along with you. What we will do is we'll do what we did similar to, yeah, sure. We'll do what we did with some of your other colleagues. We'll have each of you state your full name for the record before you guys begin.
My name is Jonathan Zavala, and I go at Juanita Sanchez Educational
What grade are you in?
Complex, and I am in 12th grade.
Okay, take it away.
Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to Alan Kushner for helping us get a chance to speak to you guys, to speak to the school board. In our civics class for our Generation Citizen project, we decided that we would like to have more after-school programs. One of the root causes of the decline in programs was the COVID pandemic, and according to the Providence After School Alliance and our school hub, we had 15 to 20 programs, and now we only have 6. According to our survey, 50% of students in our school are unaware of PASA. This is another root cause. And 70% of students, the student survey said they would like a program that supported mental health. 47% of students suspect or know that they have mental health issues. And according to the community experts that we have talked to, after-school programs are good for students in that they improve social skills with other students in a safe, relaxed environment. You get more knowledge from your program, and you can build your resume. We respectfully request that there be more after-school programs, and thank you for your time in considering our request.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that's with you that would like to speak? No one else? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Richard Garcia.
He's Richard Garcia.
Okay.
They all were told they had to sign up.
Christopher Mercedes.
Okay.
Right along.
Was
Noah Vasquez.
no as well? Okay.
Rosalind Argueta.
Rosin Oriwa.
Melissa Robb.
I have not spoken yet. Hi,
Ms. Rob, thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
I'm ready. So my name is Melissa Robb. I'm the member advocate with Enrich RI Homeschoolers. And I first would like to say that we kind of have been expecting this for a very long time because Providence is one of the very few of 36 districts without a policy. One of my very first memories of homeschooling is being, and this was many, many, many years ago, is being with some Providence homeschoolers and them talking about the packet that they got sent every year. So we're talking like 15 years ago. And every year there would be a packet, and some years it would be like 5 pages. In 2018, I have one from 2010 right in front of me. In 2018, it was 20 pages long. And so this packet of information would appear and everybody would just throw it in the trash. And that was it. That was like, there was no policy. So we've been waiting. Where's the policy? So we're not surprised at all. And we're glad. I mean, I think it's going to help us understand from year to year, you to understand, the school department to understand, and the parents to understand what to expect every year. I will also say that since this sort of happened, I don't know how long you have all been talking about it, but for us, this kind of started in the fall. And there's been good conversations. We've been very pleased with feeling like we're being heard. And especially very, very recently, Sandy has been amazing. And so I think we're being heard, and I think that we understand your concerns. I feel like a lot of the policy has been written in a way that has been a reaction to what happened during COVID. So not during normal times when kids were all at home and there was a feeling that families needed support from a school district. Whereas most homeschoolers, like you heard from the first speaker, that's not really what we're looking for. And the way the policy reads right now, there seems to be more oversight than what homeschoolers in Providence are used to. It seems like there's going to be more evaluation of their life, their resources, the way they educate their children. And as you heard from the first person, it's hard to fit how each individual family teaches their kids, educates their kids. We can't just say, hey, there's this one thing I do, and that's the end of the story. It's so much more than that. And for the families who have been homeschooling in Providence for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, they're really concerned that what they've been doing all that time is going to feel different. The reporting, I mean, what they've been reporting. And so there's definitely that concern. And there's a lot of the policy as it is right at this moment, the draft, has a lot of different parts. There's a letter of intent, there is an ed plan, there's an application, and there's a lot of crossover. Can I say one more thing? Was that my time? So one more thing I wanted to say is there's also, there might be concern that services are going to be taken away from homeschoolers. The policy seems to read in some people's mind that you're looking to take away services. And as I've expressed, that has in the past few years, some other districts have literally told homeschoolers, sorry, no more services, and RIDE got involved and services were continued. So I'm just not really sure what's going on there. But mostly I want to say thank you. Very positive experience so far.
Thank you, Ms. Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rao. Next on the list is Jennifer Curry. Ms. Curry?
Ah, Ms. Curry, we rode up here together in the elevator.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you for having us. So my name is Jennifer Curry, and I'm the state coordinator for RIGHT, which is Rhode Island Guild of Home Teachers. And we serve about 230 families each year. We don't have an exact number of our Providence folks because we just don't keep those demographics. But we do have quite a few families that responded to an email that we had sent out. So I know we've got folks out there. I would echo what Melissa said. You guys have been fantastic, easy to work with, very responsive, and inviting. I do share some of the same concerns, that are the homeschoolers in general. If you had to define who was a homeschooler and what does that look like, it's not the homeschoolers that you've seen over the past 2 years that have just flooded into the districts. We have an informal name for them. We call them crisis homeschoolers because they came in a panic, right? They were in fear. They homeschooled out of fear. And even when they came to us, they were like, what do I do? What program can I get? What online program? I have to work. And it was like, oh gosh, this is not educating your children. This is not becoming part of the homeschool community and receiving the support that we even give. They just wanted to know, what can I plug into so I can go to my computer and plug in and work from home, and my kid can work from home, and then we'll have lunch together, and then they'll finish their schoolwork. And it was overwhelming. So I can understand that from your aspect, you probably had those same people coming to you that were coming to us and saying, what do I do? And you were like, gosh, how do we help these people educate their children? I know a lot of those type of families, their children have now returned to school now, that whether it was masks or vaccines or whatever was keeping them home. We have had a small group of people that said, oh, I always wanted to homeschool, and COVID's what kind of, kicked me in the butt and got me going. And so those people have become part of our community. They come to our activities. They're part of the things that we do. So they're receiving support that way. And, I said the other night at the policy committee meeting, I commended you for going above and beyond and doing all this support. But I think that it's going to become more work on your end than what's needed. And it makes it confusing for the traditional homeschooler to say, oh my gosh, I want all this, these things and this stuff. And even just a list of curriculum is, if I had to give you a list, I think it would be bigger than that packet that Melissa talked about. Homeschoolers traditionally have a lot of children. I have 7 myself. So the chore that it would be to write down, to give you everything that I do, that would be more tedious than when I've had to write my high school transcripts for my boys. So just so that you know that, my husband tells me I have too many books. I have a room that's overtaken with books and books and books, as we call it, the library. We pull from that all the time. I'd have to literally, to tell you what I use for a curriculum, the list would be so vast that I don't know that you have the data, a system to input that data and where that would reside and where that would live. And then somebody needs to look at that. And that's a full-time job. So that's just kind of, but I want to echo Melissa's, thankfulness for the support and I think it's more than what's needed. I think the crisis is over, and so we can go back to business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carey.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Next on the list is Pedro Pihara. Mr. Pihara? Yep.
Mr. Quijada, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please begin when you're ready, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Pedro Pihara. I homeschool my 7-year-old son. He's doing first grade now. My wife and I are both immigrants from Central America. Through a lot of hard work and many sacrifices, we have both been able to obtain doctoral degrees in the social sciences. Now, our education has provided us with perspectives that have led us to decide how to go about with the education of our son. Even though the pandemic was an important factor in our choice to homeschool him, the very decisive element was, no offense intended at all, the decisive element was the realization that he had a higher chance to learn to read and write in his first grade at home than at public grade school. My son is finishing his first grade. He knows how to read and write in 2 languages, English and Spanish, in that order. He reads fluently. One of his favorite publications is this magazine. It's called The Week Junior, which is also helping him to become an informed global citizen. He also has learned to play an instrument. I only wish I could show you how good he plays the guitar. We belong to Enrich RI, a homeschooling community that provides us with support. Through this community, my son is able to visit museums, participate in activities, and engage with other children his age. Now, we feel that we got it, that we are doing okay. And we would very much like to continue doing it. And to be able to do this, we need mainly the freedom to do it the way we have been doing it. And I am, however, well aware that my case is not the same as everybody. So what I would like to say to the school board is that when you adopt this policy, this homeschool policy, please try to pass a policy that is inclusive for both the parents that need support from the district, as well as of those who, like me, are doing okay on our own. And that's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quijada.
Thank you, Mr. Pihara.
Thank you.
Next is Diane Burdick. Diane Burdick here?
Thank you, Ms. Reddick.
Courtney Goglia. Courtney Goglia. Thank you.
Could we have the correct pronunciation of your last name for the record?
Yes, it's Golia.
Golia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm here also to address the homeschooling policy proposal. So I have been homeschooling for just 2 years. By nature, I'm also very shy and very private. I'm here today. I do have some experience with public speaking. But socially, I'm very shy. Despite this, in just 2 years, I've connected with so many homeschooling families. The community was really waiting with open arms for us. There are experienced homeschool parents to provide guidance and advice whenever needed. There are classes through, so I'm a member of Enrich RI as well as Write as well. And there are classes that parents can take to cover choosing curriculum, what to do when you get in a rut, what to do over the holidays, homeschooling a high schooler, scheduling and getting started. The list goes on and on. I also have a unique perspective because I worked for the government in the child protection field for many years. I worked as an investigator and I worked as a case manager for several years. So I very much understand the concern when there's a subset of families that seem to be like outside the system, and so you assume they have low community of visibility maybe, and potential for harm and neglect, or just sort of being left behind. And I definitely had those concerns as a child protection worker, or assumptions. Now that I have like an insider's view of this subset of the community, I see that concerns were really unfounded. These children are not failing or floundering or lost. They're articulate, happy, they're thriving academically. Now that I'm in the homeschool community, I also see that the resources and support in the community are literally overflowing. So if a parent doesn't have the tools, they can quickly acquire them. There are literally books that go through exactly what your children need to learn each grade. I really appreciate your care and concern, but I don't think that this vibrant community needs to take any resources from the school board or from the school department. Personally, our homeschool family, like many homeschool families I know, we really enjoy the flexibility and the personalization of the homeschooling. So it doesn't really lend itself to filling out a schedule of prescribed learning prior to the learning happening. In addition, we usually continue some subjects through the summer. So I don't necessarily have like my curriculum completely set in the summer, because we're still working through some things potentially, depending on where they're at. We make plans to learn what's needed, but we go where the learning takes us. So, and I share teaching sometimes with other parents and with co-ops. We got the opportunity this year to actually learn some Rhode Island history with a docent at Smith's Castle. And from there, I was just going to give some examples of where, we use what's happening in the community and what pops up to inform our curriculum as the year goes on, and be flexible like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collier. Next will be Andrea Hartman. Andrea?
It's actually Andrea.
Andrea, sorry.
Ms. Hartman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please begin when you're ready.
Okay, I'm going to give you another representation of what homeschool a day in a homeschool family looks like. I have 4 kids, ages 10, 8, 6, and 4, and we've been homeschooling for 4 years. I'm first going to explain a little of how our homeschool works, and then I'll tell you what school looked like the last 2 days, yesterday and today. So one way we organize our homeschool is around skill-based and content-based subjects. So with skill-based subjects like reading, spelling, math, handwriting, Latin, each child works at their own level and doesn't move on until she masters the current skill. So with grades are a little bit weird to apply in these, because I don't let my kid move on until they can get basically an A. I select the best curriculum for each child based on his or her specific needs. And with content-based subjects, I can lump multiple kids together, and I'll either read to the kids, have them paraphrase what they've heard, then discuss the topic together, or we might all do memory work together. Yesterday, we did some reading and discussing during breakfast. Then we packed up and drove to Purgatory Chasm State Park and listened to our memory work on the way. While hiking in Purgatory with another homeschool family, we saw pink lady slippers, a pileated woodpecker drilling a hole, a red-tailed hawk, and we found mica flaking out of granite in the path. Then we drove home listening to Pippi Longstocking on an audiobook we got from the library. And at home, my 6-year-old painted a pink lady slipper in her nature journal. My 8-year-old started working on learning the Greek alphabet, which is his current interest. My 10-year-old practiced piano, and the 4-year-old needed a nap. And that night, the older 2 went with my husband to do batting and pitching practice for Little League, and I read the younger 2 some more books. Today, we did a more typical day. We did today's Wordle online game to practice our geography, and did more reading and discussion at breakfast. Then the older 2 worked on their independent work, math, handwriting, and Latin, and I worked with the younger kids on math, handwriting, and phonics. We drove to the library for preschool story time for the youngest. The older ones brought along their own reading. They chatted with the children's librarian, who also does their book club and art club. We checked out some books, then listened to Pippi Longstocking again on the way home. I read our history and geography readers before and during lunch. The younger kids worked on their crafts from the library. My 8-year-old son rode on the rowing machine. The 10-year-old helped me clean up, and then we all did a quiet reading time before I gathered them together again to dictate sentences for spelling. So I appreciate the district asking for homeschool parents' commitment and plan to give their child a thorough education, but getting my plan approved should not be necessary because I want the freedom to adjust as we go based on the needs that arise for each kid. And I know my kids the best. And I also know that our methods might look different or frequently look different than a traditional school's methods. And I want the board and the district to recognize the benefits of different pedagogies. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Harden.
Thank you, Ms. Harden. Next is Jasmine and Keno Mullings.
Thank you both for joining us. Are each of you planning to speak? If you are, okay, so what we'll do is we'll keep right. So each of you will have 3 minutes to speak. So please begin when you're ready.
So, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for hearing us. Thank you so much for doing all of this so I could see what you do at the school board meetings. I've actually wanted to come all this time, but this was the time that I picked. So for me especially, I have more of an appeal. One of the things that I think you do very well is contact families, or at least have it where you know people can tell you, hey, I'm going to be homeschooling. The issue that we would really love to see resolved is more of this per family, where you're sitting there and you know the faces and the people that you're talking to. I've had a bit of a hard time, I know that you have as well on your end, trying to keep stable individuals working in the school district for the homeschool community. I've had several names change over the years, and that instability causes a ripple effect. So if you really want to know what would help me as a homeschool student and teacher, it would help if we had a stable staff to work with. We have a stable line of communication, and we have quick and constant communication going throughout our terms as we go through the homeschool process. It's a lot of stress and it's a lot of anxiety that gets built up, knowing that we have to depend on the school district to give us things that will allow us to homeschool, and then not hearing back whether or not we have the green light, and then not being able to get all of our paperwork constantly read by the same person, always having to figure out, well, who's the new person? I have had that change over so many opportunities to try and homeschool every year, and that causes a bit of a delay on our end and a lot of angst. So it would really help, if those things were a little bit more solidified on your end, and especially in the department, the name has changed, multiple pathways, all these different things. So really getting on your end, like, okay, this is what we're doing, and communicating it well with us so that we can depend a little bit more on that communication process to be consistent the whole time.
Good point.
Also, I just wanted to say one more thing. As you can hear, there's so many things that can be done with education. People who are affluent will have a lot of different opportunities versus some people who are not. So if you have more community programs during the day and not just after school, that would really help homeschool communities, people who don't have the resources to do, the martial arts classes, the sports classes, instead of having where it's only after school programs happening, because we save a considerable amount of money for the government and for the public, by doing our own thing. I think that it would be not too much to ask to say, hey, can we have some programs that are at least a little bit more affordable that we can plug into, especially if we want to see our kids have some of the same opportunities.
Thank you. Please, sir.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your service. My name is Keelan Mullings. I'm on the other half of the homeschool. I function as your job, the superintendent of our homeschool. We have three children. One just graduated from Johnson Wales. She graduated early. She went through homeschool and then high school at the Met. Our son is now doing his freshman year, and he's already accelerated. He finished his first year, but he's now a sophomore, and he did homeschool and then high school at the Met. And our youngest, who has been homeschooled for several years, we're now considering, what to do for high school, whether we're going to homeschool or we're going to consider the Met or LaSalle. I think what you've heard in terms of our homeschooling policy, we feel strongly about homeschooling our children. We believe that, we're both college educated individuals. I run a software development company. My wife is an artist. And I think we're best suited to educate our children because we can educate them at their pace. And it has been proven. My son is an accomplished pianist. My children have been published. They've won awards, and so many things when they go into a public arena that they're excelling. We have created our own homeschool community spanning several countries. We have connected with homeschool families in Costa Rica, in Jamaica, in Africa. My wife's geography class actually pulls in native folks from those countries to give a brief on those countries. For U.S. government, we have an ex-federal agent who teaches that class as part of our homeschool curriculum. So there's that a lot of flexibility. And so when a family takes the time, and we're not a wealthy family by the stretch of the imagination, but takes the time to homeschool their children, it's a lot of effort. I think what could be, in terms of helping the whole system, is more of a partnership. As my wife stated, just having that contact person. Or even having a platform that you can upload the documents so it's the same, consistent. If you need a platform, I'll volunteer my company, we'll build one for free. Having that systematic way. There's another thing the gentleman mentioned about having multiple approaches when you look at homeschooling. There's one approach, there's families that want to do homeschooling and have no clue. We went through that valley for 2 years and now we're veterans, so we've got it. But that approach is, here's the basic framework, here's what's needed, here's who you speak to, but here's a sample curriculum all the way through, and that can help you, here's your support. Then there's the other path, again, the basic, here's what you need to do for the law to comply, but then just send us your documents as you normally have. So that provides two pathways, one for individuals who want to homeschool and are new, and those who are always doing it. And finally, I close by saying, I think having that support mechanism in terms of, as my wife mentioned, programs that are during the day, because we are saving the department money, a lot of money. I know of other homeschooling families that would love for their children to have a laptop or a Chromebook, something as simple as that. I think just having those resource support for homeschool families are awesome. But you're doing a great job, but I think the stress here is partnership. And once we have partnership, I think families will be happier, and I think the government will be happier as well. So thank you for your time.
Mr. and Mrs. Mullins, thank you so much.
Next on the list is Melissa Hughes. Melissa Hughes. Thank you.
Ms. Hughes, thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
Good evening, members of the school board and fellow community members, parents, and students. I prepared a few short remarks, but I just want to say how energizing it is to be here in this space and hear from so many students and parents who are advocating for their own education and their needs and the individual needs that every family has. I'm here tonight as a member of the leadership team of the district's Parent Advisory Council. And we share a lot of those same ideas. We like to think of ourselves as being in partnership with the district for our kids' education. And we also love and want more continuity and great communication. Those themes don't seem to change whether we have our kids in person in school or if we're schooling them at home. PAC had its most recent meeting on Monday evening, where we spent over an hour with Superintendent Montañez, Commissioner Infante Green, and their teams. We talked about such varied topics, based on what parents were most interested in hearing about. We had representatives from over 20 separate schools in PPSD, which is a remarkable increase in engagement and participation across the district. And to me, I think that speaks to the hard work from the parents themselves, taking time out of their busy schedules, but also the commitment of Superintendent Montañez, of the FACE team, and of the commissioner. All of us are working in the same direction to try to achieve those TAP goals that we talk about, specifically around having engaged families that are participating in their children's education. We talked about all sorts of things, including talking about changing COVID rates and mitigation strategies, summer programming, school construction, Title I funding, and suggestions from parents on how to spend that. We talked about the school year calendar for next year, distance learning day plans, after school tutoring, security and safety concerns, social media use in schools, transportation issues, and anti-racism in school culture, and how we're making progress on these things. I also wanted to mention that our PAC leadership team will be having elections at our June meeting. Our last meeting of the year is June 21st. Those are open to any of those PAC representatives from any of the schools. The commitment includes a monthly meeting of the members like we just had on Monday, as well as a separate planning meeting to help talk about what agenda topics parents want to hear more about and what guest speakers we might want at those meetings. We also meet twice a month with Superintendent Montañez as a leadership team to dive even deeper on those issues and see how we can move that progress forward. Recently, our two co-chairs testified at two separate General Assembly hearings, one the Senate Oversight Committee, and earlier in May, as well as the House Education Committee on a bill with proposed amendments to the Crowley Act. Parents are working really hard all the time to get there. When we have these meetings, we've been continuing to have them on Zoom. We have parents that are calling in while they're driving somewhere. We have parents that are nursing babies. We have parents cooking dinner, and we have parents doing their best to participate. And I just want to say thank you to Superintendent Montañez in particular and his team for honoring that commitment and continuing to build those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Thank you. Is Sheila Miranda arrived? Sheila Miranda? Is Jennifer Jermosin here? Jennifer Jermosin. That concludes public comments, sir.
I believe I have one more name on my list here. Mr. Matthew Cuddleback. Mr. Cuddleback here. Okay. We have a few public comments that were submitted, written public comments, and they are also with regards to the homeschool policy. I'm going to have these written comments submitted to public record as well for folks to view. Next on our agenda is school board comments, and I'm going to start off school board comments by thanking our students as well as our parents who signed up for public comment this evening. The school board values student voice, it values community voice. This is a platform for students to come and voice their concerns, as well as for the community to voice theirs. And so as our students from JSEC were presenting, and I was looking over the bullet points that they provided, it reminded me of an article that I had read, I want to say maybe about a month ago, related to school social workers. As a social worker myself, I am always intrigued in terms of the role and the functions of school social workers. And one of the things that the article had outlined was the ratio of school social workers to students. And so according to the information provided here by our JSEC students, they have a ratio of 1 social worker per 380 students. The article that I was reading, and I believe the article identified a rise in cases, or a rise in students looking for mental health supports prior to the pandemic, but certainly as we emerge from the pandemic, the data indicated that it was 1 social worker per 500 students. So certainly I think the data presented here by our JSEC students and the data that was referenced in this article both identify that there is a growing need for mental health supports in schools. So, you know, I applaud our students for taking the time this evening and coming to speak about their needs. And I encourage you to continue to come to school board meetings, continue to hold the district accountable to ensure that we are meeting your goals. I know that there are a few of you that are in your final year at JSEC, but your voice is just as important because you are setting the table for those that come behind you to ensure that they have the resources that they need. So here's what I would like to do, because this is an area of expertise for me. There's not too many areas where I could say that, but this is one of them. I would like to connect with the students that came here this evening to discuss this further, because certainly we're not giving it the time that it deserves here this evening, to talk about some options that you may have, not just internally at school, but also some community-based options that I think you all could tap into. So I will, by way of Mr. Kushner, be reaching out to you all to schedule a time for me to come to JSEC and sit with you and explore this further. I also want to thank your teacher, Ms. Burdick, for joining you this evening. Certainly our educators support our students in a number of different ways outside of teaching and learning. And this is just another example of that. So Ms. Burdick, thank you so much for joining your students this evening. And I look forward to connecting with you and the students at JSEC to address this concern.
Thank you, I appreciate that, because you never know when one of those students might wind up on your school board.
So that concludes my public comments. I'll open it up to school board members if there are others who would like to say something. Mr. Nunez, is there something you'd like to say, sir? Please jump in.
Thank you. I wanted to thank everyone for being here this evening. I love when the room is filled, brings a lot of energy. It riles me up in a good way, so don't worry about that. So I just wanted to thank all the students for speaking up and coming in today upon us here. Mental health is very important. I know after school programs are also very important. I know growing up in the city, being in the system as well, I didn't have a lot of programs available for me to do. Just because I wasn't always working, or after zone was just getting started up, so there weren't as many. So I can definitely understand how important that has to be, and it's vital for us to support our students through this process, especially when it comes to their mental health, because I know COVID had an impact on a lot of people, especially students in the schools, because they have to change that dynamic as well. So once again, I wanted to thank those students for coming here. And great for also bringing them along. And it was great to see them there. And I did also want to add that I'm on vacation this week, so I get 3 weeks off. Some of us do, some of us don't. But I dedicated my time to go do a couple of school walkthroughs. And it was very delightful to see the classroom engagement from the students, being engaged. I did not see a single student without a pencil in their hand. I know when I was in school, not all of us have pencils in their hands, or even a pen or a piece of paper, so it was very engaging, very welcoming as well. and they just want our support and would love to see more PPSD board members go into the schools and advocating for their students and all these that they need. And they speak very highly of our superintendent. So keep up the great work, and we're definitely on the right track as well.
Really, really thank you, Mr. Nunez. Mr. Stevens, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, can I just ask Jesus a question? So when you visited the school, what was like the reaction from the students, teachers, administrators? They were very, 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 very excited to see me. I went in and I asked if it was to be a good time for me to come in, and said, yeah, of course. And the principals at both schools were had me walk through with them. Students were talking about me, oh, my lunch, I can't wait to go eat, I'm hungry. But it was very welcoming. And I asked them what they were learning as well. Today actually when I was over at Nathaniel Green, I saw some students who got into some trouble, but I was able to talk to them and give them the guidance and the feedback that they did. But they greatly appreciated to see me and see a board member there in the schools and talking to them as well. So that was very great for me to have that impact on a student there at the school. It was very good. So thank you for asking that question.
Good job, Mr. Jeff back there. And really quick, how did you schedule that visit?
I called the schools.
Okay.
Yeah, I called the schools, and most of the secretaries, they call us back, where I would or just come in and then we'll see if we're available to take you in for a school. So that's how I went about that. So thank you.
All right, I just wanted to say really quick, because I just want to make sure that the board and the superintendent's office, again, can we please look at how we schedule board members going into schools? Because I don't want like the talk to be around town that school board members are disrupting the learning environment, because that's so far from the truth. When we go there, we're listening to teachers, we're listening to administrators, and they love that school board members are in the schools, like they love it. So I'm asking that we please stay so far away from board members disrupting the learning environment, because that is so far from the truth. So I'm just asking that we please, as a board, look into that, just as well as the superintendent's office, so we can please schedule the best way as possible for board members to go and visit schools. Because I have a similar experience to you, Jesus. Every time I'm in the school, students are happy, administrators are happy, teachers are happy that we're there. They're like, where have the board been? So I want to let you guys know that it's a great impact, and I want to help the district celebrate the small wins that are going on in the school. I know when I visit schools, I've been hearing about lunches, the improvement on lunches. When I hear about the improvement on lunches, I'm able to take that to the school board and let the community know what's going on. So I want to be in the schools. I want to make sure that we're actually getting board members into schools so we can celebrate these small wins as well. So thank you, Jesus, for going. Any additional comments from Mr. Nunez or Mr. Stevens? Good, gentlemen? Okay. Dr. Santon.
Just three quick things. One is that I wanted to thank our school board president and vice president for helping us to organize and facilitate a school board retreat, which we just had this past weekend. Which, we've got a lot of new board members, old board members, and older still board members, which I guess is me. It was a great opportunity because we've had so many school board meetings on Zoom and through the pandemic for us to get to know one another and find common ground. I came out of it really kind of fired up and excited. And I really appreciate the work that you folks helped to do to make that happen. Two other quick things. I want to echo what President Thomas has said, thanking the students who came here. From Juanita Sanchez, I noticed as an American history professor and somebody very interested in civics, that y'all participated in a civics class, that was part of what got you here. And doing your citizenship duty, in a sense, by coming here and sharing what you've learned with us and telling us things that we don't know that we need to know. So all praise to your teacher and to you for doing that. And I think it also is instructive to the rest of us of the vital importance of making sure that our kids in this city have access to civics education, which is much more than just how does the Electoral College work and how many representatives do we have in the House of Representatives. It's about participating in our common governance, and that's what you kids have done. My son and I are plaintiffs in the federal lawsuit against the Rhode Island Department of Education to try and make that available to every kid in the city and state. So I just wanted to thank all of you for doing that. The last thing I'll say more about the homeschooling policy when we get to the number 8 on the agenda, because I'm the co-chair of the policy committee, so I'll say more about that. But I want to thank the parents who came here to tell us about their daily experiences with homeschooling. You know, it isn't something I've ever been personally or professionally familiar with. I've been on the board for 7 years. We have passed through homeschooling candidates without really asking too many questions about it until recently. We've been trying to learn as much as we can. It's enormously helpful to hear your stories and you doing your citizenship work too by coming here and sharing them with us. You know, one thing I'll say about policies is that while they are typed in ink, they are really kind of metaphorically written in pencil, which means, you know, policies can be changed as we learn about their impact. That's what good policy making is. I know Sandy and Mark were back there taking mental, if not physical notes as they were listening to what all of you had to say, and I was too. So, so I want to thank you for coming here, and don't be shy about coming here again.
Thank you, Dr. Santal. Additional comments from board members?
Just two real quick. The kids from JSEC left, didn't they? I was hoping to be the first person to give a comment, to invite them to our Health and Wellness Committee. We have a Health and Wellness Committee that is now being supported on PPSC's side by Sandy Stewart and her team in the Wellness Department. And so we welcome, actually, Mr. Kushner, if you can help me, or Mr. Thomas, if you can help me pass along that information to JSAC, to the civics class, the educator that was here, and then also the students, so that they could be a part of those conversations. Our next Health and Wellness Committee meeting is next week, May 25th, I believe in this room. And then my second point is for those school board members or any person really that has a concern or a question regarding our school buildings, the school building committee, there's a school building committee comprised of members from RIDE, the city of Providence, PPSD, parents, and others who are invested in learning more about what's happening with the condition of our buildings. If you have a question or a concern, to please pass those along to the board by way of Mr. Kushner, so that they can get to the committee. I will be in attendance. The next meeting is next week, May 24th, Tuesday, May 24th, and it will be downstairs in the PD room. And those are my two comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Any additional comments from board members? Okay, looks like we are good to go. Next on our agenda is school board committee updates. We will begin with the policy committee update, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Santal.
So back once again, I wanted to apologize to those of you who came here to talk about your homeschooling experiences and your thoughts and recommendations on the proposed policy. We somehow wound up with some sort of discrepancy between our agenda and the official Secretary of State's agenda. In fact, I think Melissa for pointing that out to me, because we could have goofed in some sort of way, had I not known that. I was looking forward to having us discuss that policy, but it is, as you saw, if you've been here since the beginning of this meeting, we had to strike it from the agenda because it's not on the official Secretary of State agenda for this meeting, which is the agenda record. So we will certainly try and make sure that error doesn't happen again, but I want to apologize. I hope those of you who came to testify in public comment about homeschooling still believe your trip here was worthwhile. It certainly was for us. The policy will be back. We'll make a reappearance for first read at our next meeting on June 8th. I certainly encourage you to communicate with us in the interim and to come to that meeting as well. The bulk of my policy committee report was essentially to brag about all the work we've been doing putting the homeschooling policy together, which officially doesn't exist as of yet. So there's that. The committee is also Lindsay is helping us put together some projects that we can hopefully use some grad student interns at Brown University to help us work through in the coming months. We're also going to be reconsidering the school board bylaws in some detail to try and improve our own internal practice and also involve the community more in what we do. So you can look for that at a school board meeting coming soon.
Thank you, Dr. Santal. Next, for the school board committee updates is the finance committee update. I believe the finance committee met last Wednesday and was speaking with Mr. Edie, who's not here. He informed me that each of the contracts were vetted fully and that the school board, that the finance committee approved the contracts in the finance committee for final approval here this evening. Mr. Stevens, is there anything that you would like to add as a member of the finance committee as it relates to any of the contracts before we take vote?
Absolutely not. Everything was good. Self-explanatory. Happy with the way the district's moving on these contracts. And yes, and I think I just noted, I don't know how the board can work on it. I don't know what committee, probably health and wellness. I know that there's a waiver that's out there that could serve out, so we can serve out. We'll talk about it in health and wellness. Everything's good. We'll talk about it.
Okay, sounds good, Mr. Stevens. Thank you. And with that, we will move to the next item, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve items 10 through 20? Motion's been made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Santal. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next on the item is action items, and that is a review of homeschool candidates. Do we have someone from the district saying a few words with regards to item 22? I see Mr. Catone making his way forward. It's good to see you again, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, thank you. Yes, so we have two candidates, a first grader and a third grader who have met the requirements of the state statute and submitted what they needed to in order to have them presented to you for approval and have been reviewed by me and our teaching and learning team based on what was submitted.
So the district has no concerns with these two candidates,
No,
correct?
not at all.
Are there any questions from members of the board? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the homeschool candidates? Motion's been made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hayward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have Schoolworks Contract FY23. Do we have a member from the district discussing Schoolworks Contract? Hi, how are you?
Good evening, everyone. I'm well, thank you. For the Schoolworks contract for the Redesign strategic partner, the questions in terms of what is it, would you like me to just give you an overview and outline?
Yeah, let's begin there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the redesign process has been paused for some time at 6 schools. We have 4 high schools and 2 middle schools. Del Sesto Middle, Gilbert Stewart Middle, Hope High School, Alvarez High School, JSEC, and Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
So those are the 6 schools that would be part of this redesign strategic partner to do a needs assessment for the redesign model, to do the collection of the qualitative data and examine all of the data necessary to arrive at a decision of what that final redesign model would be in the fall.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I mean, essentially, you know, we just have urgency to move forward with this contract. We're very excited to work with Schoolworks to be able to partner with all of the school leaders and stakeholders in the community.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
Are you familiar with Spring Point?
Spring Point in terms of as a vendor?
Correct.
I'm not.
Okay. The reason why I ask is I was taking a look at my notes in preparation for this evening. And Spring Point did the district paid for a similar service in March of 2020. And when I see this Schoolworks contract, to me it reads very similar to the contract 2 years ago with regards to an assessment, right? And so some of the schools that are on here, Alvarez, Mount Pleasant, from my memory, those were the schools that were assessed back in March of 2020. So my question is, and you may not have the answer for it because you're not familiar with the contract, but two things that I would like to see is, I'd like to see the RFP from School Spring and compare it to this contract here to see where there are similarities and differences. Because I'm struggling to understand what this contract here will do at schools like Alvarez and Mount Pleasant that the previous contract just 2 years ago didn't do. And so, you know, between that assessment and then obviously we had the Johns Hopkins, you know, which some may say is an assessment as well, I'm struggling to understand the differences between what this contract will produce versus the one from March 2020. My notes, I didn't have the RFP available, otherwise I would have brought it in and share, so I apologize. But Ms. Jackson, I see you have come forward. I'm not sure if there's anything.
First, I don't know if I missed the introduction, but Yvonne?
Yes.
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I apologize. Ivana, I'm Dr. Yvonne Alvarez. I'm the Redesign and Innovation Officer. And I started here with PPSD in January of this year.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank
you.
you.
And then a quick question before we get into this. Why wasn't this contract reviewed at Finance Committee? Why are we talking about it here?
Understood. So my understanding is that it's not unprecedented when there's urgency to have a contract come through. And again, we do want to meet the timeline to be able to make a final decision for the fall and have it presented. And Ms. Jackson can speak more to maybe what occurred in the past or in terms of even possibly that Spring Point contract, which I'm not aware of.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I can, she's here since January and I'm here since October. So I think part of the picking up the pieces from the previous contract, I'm not clear about the work that was done, but I know that was done during COVID. So I don't know about the follow through. We know that we've had changes, and Schoolworks has been working to evaluate schools across the state in their progress, schools that are in redesign or CSIP. And so we want to bring them in to work with us directly for our redesign schools as we are restarting that for the upcoming school year.
And Ms. Jackson, I thank you for for sharing that. My concern is still, so, and I get the two of you weren't here when, the last iteration of this took place. I was here and I remember there were documents that were produced, particularly at Alvarez and Mount Pleasant, with regards to an assessment. And so this is just me thinking out loud. I would think that the district would take that information, shift through it, see what is still applicable today, utilize it, and then maybe, we go forward with the contract. But this just sounds like it's something that the district is paying for, again, that was already done. And in my opinion, I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm gonna be completely honest. And I understand the urgency behind it, but I also need you to understand that the district has crossed this rule 2 years ago. And I don't know what this contract will do or what it will reveal that the contract 2 years ago did it.
Thomas, I just wanted to add that I agree with you. I think that it's very possible that in 2 years, there have been a lot of changes at the schools and we need to do this again, but I'm a little concerned that no one recalls this contract except for you, and I think given that it's $500,000 and there's not a breakdown here of what exactly this $183,000 interest and planning sessions is, and I'm also a little uncomfortable with approving this contract this time. And then I'm also curious to see what the results are from that prior assessment and whether those can be publicly available, because that would be of interest in a wider school community as well.
Dr. Santop, please.
Yeah, and just to add, I'm not entirely comfortable with it either. We have created a process that's worked pretty well for the school board for the last 7 years, which is that contracts go through the finance committee, which is very experienced at asking precisely these kinds of questions. This is over $500,000 of the taxpayers' money. We had a finance committee meeting on April 19th. We had a finance committee meeting on May 11th. There's no reason why we should be rushing this through a school board meeting where we haven't really had the time to vet it in the way that the finance committee would. So, I have to say my strong preference would be to see this come through the finance committee. It could have happened already. There's no reason it couldn't have. That's how our process works. It works well. We've generally avoided misspending the taxpayers' money by using that money. So I'm reluctant to support it for that reason.
And then just one more comment. It is very typical that at these finance committees, vendors are also there to discuss and to share any information. If board members are unclear about something and something just doesn't seem, clear, the vendor is there, especially if it's a contract of this size. I've seen people come in, for a $25,000 contract, and they're there with, they're building a relationship with us. I do not recall that contract, honestly. I'm looking through our various agendas to see if I can find it, and I don't see it for March of 2020, but that is another reason why we upload all of these documents onto the very public website, so that in the event we need to go back, we see it, especially when folks change. So those are two things I would recommend or three things. One, reminder, upload these documents. Two, try to follow the schedule that we have for finance committee review. And three, when you have a contract of this size, encourage the vendor to, have some sort of, make some sort of contact on the day of, unless you yourself are so well versed in what it is that they're going to do that you can speak for them.
There are 2 phases to this contract, which I can definitely review if that would help. But we can
bring it back to the finance committee.
Okay.
I would, and I appreciate Dr. Alvarez's willingness to walk us through it. My concern is not this contract as it's written. My concern is, and I'm hoping that the district can pull that RFP, send it to us, along with this RFP, so we could look at it and see the similarities and differences between the two. And, you know, if I'm wrong, I have no problem with saying I was wrong. But in shifting through my notes, I had a star next to spring play because of the amount and the work that was going to be done at some of our schools. And so when I saw this, and I saw the schools that we have on here, and I'm particularly highlighting again Alvarez and Mount Pleasant, because I vividly remember those two schools on that other contract for an assessment. I'm like, well, how frequently does a school department need to do an assessment like this? Is it every 2 years? Is it every 5 years? That would be one. And then two, I would like to see what the documents that came from the last assessment and how the district is going to incorporate that. So we're just not spinning our wheels doing assessments over and over again. So I would appreciate it if we did get that information, and then if we were able to push it through finance. And if you, Ms. Jackson, or Superintendent, would like to convene, finance committee sooner rather than later to have this looked at, and then think about how we can call a quick board meeting to then approve the contract if we need to. I'd be more than willing to do that as long as my colleagues are available to do so. I hear you when you say, it's time sensitive, and I want to be respectful to that.
I appreciate that.
In the same breath, I also want to make sure that we're not doing something that we've already done.
The next finance committee meeting is Wednesday, June 8th. Mr. Kushner, when to get something on the agenda for a committee meeting, when would we, is it the Friday before? Which would be, the third. So we are able to get it in front of finance pretty quickly, but as board president said, we do have the precedent of calling a meeting just to approve something. Contract, the deadline's coming up. So if it needs to be accelerated, let us know that.
Will do.
Thank you.
Mr. Ruggiero, so would we vote?
You could just take a motion to continue this matter to the next meeting.
Perfect. Is there a motion to continue the matter related to schoolwork contract FY23? Motion's been made by Dr. Goldberg. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Mahingu. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next action item is FY23 local budget ordinances. And we're going to have Mr. Scott present it. So just to cue it up to board members before Mr. Scott dives in, what we are looking at is not the final version, as I understand it from Mr. Scott, of the budget, as the city and the state are still working through their figures. And once those have been finalized, Mr. Scott will then return with some final numbers. So I just want folks to keep that in mind. What we're looking at is not the final product. Did I miss anything with that, Mr. Scott?
No, all I would add is, I know we have this as an action item. I would suggest that we also hold to vote on this until June. And so use today to share what our budget plan is. And that will be back in June to share if there are any changes, but also if there are any questions that people have between now and that time, we can answer, because I know there's a lot to go through in the budget, and we want to make sure people have ample time to review it, digest it, and ask questions. So with that, and I know we were with you last month to talk through the budget. Thank you. So we were with you in April and to talk through the budget, and what we were talking through there was really an overview of revenue and expenses over the past few years, high-level investments and reduction, projected gap closing, and that was our preliminary look at our budget. What we'll go through today are our ordinances, and I believe those were all posted and shared. So We won't go, as you know, they're very detailed, so we won't go through line by line, but we'll try to give you an overview and then open up for questions from the group. And then we'll be back in June to talk through some of our stimulus spending, but also any changes that would be to these ordinances based on either revenue changes or something else. So just for those both new and experienced here with our ordinances and what those are, it's a city protocol that we've followed across the city, and it breaks down spending into 3 different ordinances: appropriation, compensation, and classification. So let me talk you through each of those and what they entail. So the appropriation is, you kind of think about it as your funding by category, and it's broken down into the UCOA, which is the Uniform Code of Chart of Accounts. That is the kind of the categories that things are broken down into are dictated by the state. So that's easy to compare district to district. And so that's you'll see things like salaries that obviously encapsulate a lot, all the way down to snow plowing and other things like that. It's important to note that our appropriation speaks solely to our local budget. And if you remember from last time, that is the 400 million plus part of our budget that comes from state sources, which is about 2/3 of our local budget, and city sources, which is roughly the other 1/3. So that's what's in the appropriation ordinance, but basically by category, how we plan to spend our funds. Next is our compensation ordinance. And what that has is the list of positions and their salary ranges for FY23. And you'll see some color coding there that tells you about the source of funding for the positions, whether they are new or whether they're changed from the previous year. It does assume base salary increases. So we are under contract with the PTU, and they're slated to receive a 2% increase for next year. So that is reflected in the ordinance, as well as projected for non-union staff. We are in negotiations with Local 1033, the best unit, as well as our teacher assistants, crossing yards, and bus monitors, as well as Local 1339, who are our clerical staff. So you won't see a cost of living increase for them until we settle a contract. And like I said, it identifies added and removed positions as well as funding source. And then the last one is classification, and that identifies FTEs by school and department, and also gives a breakdown of funding sources. So where I'll spend some time talking through is the appropriation ordinance, to give you a sense of where some of the expense changes are from year to year. And this should align with how when we talked last month, and we showed the expense growth over time, where the kind of what buckets of spending that falls in, and what we're projecting for next year. So when you look on the left-hand side, this is the high-level categories, and obviously the ordinance breaks it down in finer detail. But we're projecting a $6.2 million increase in spending for the year. That's slightly below the last few years. Roughly more than 2/3 of that is in salaries and benefits, and you see that in blue and orange, which is typical. Over 70% of our spending is, or 75% of our spending is in those areas. So that's where a lot of our increases are, and then some smaller increases in other areas. So let me walk you through the big categories of spend and what some of the kind of puts and takes are in those categories. On salaries, the biggest adjustment here or change here is our salary increases from year to year. So those cost of living increases that I mentioned, and any step increases staff are entitled to, is roughly $5 million. So there's an increase from there. But we also have reductions in positions as we've had some declines in enrollment in particular areas, as well as using some of our non-local funds to support positions in the district. So netted together, and I should also add, we've made an investment to increase the number of special education classrooms we have at the elementary level. So we've added 5 classrooms there to both support, as you heard, not explicitly related to the pandemic, but there has been an increase in the number of students being identified as needing special education services. And so both to reduce class sizes where we can, but also to recognize that the additional need that we may see, we have added 5 additional special education classrooms. So when you net out some of those changes that I just mentioned, it makes our salary line roughly flat for next year, both through the additions that I mentioned as well as the reductions. The benefits and salary line is a fairly significant increase in $3 million, roughly half of the overall spending increase, and that is largely in the form of active medical benefits as well as city retirement. On the services side, this comes through a number of areas, including tuition. That's the kind of LEA portion, the portion the district pays to students who are enrolled in charter schools. Service contracts like our custodial contract, and then translation and interpretation services. So one of the contracts that was approved earlier, or the two of our contracts, were for Effective and Lionbridge. We've seen significant use in that, which is fantastic, as more people get the word out and understand its use. So we are investing roughly $450,000 in more translation and interpretation services.
Zach, can I ask you a question real quick? Do you prefer to get questions at the end?
No, go ahead.
I was just curious if you were able to break out the tuition that we're paying to send kids to charter schools, and if there's a trend line. I think I know what the trend line is, but I'm just curious over the last several years. But that we're talking, I guess that's the question. One is breaking it out, and then the other is the trend.
Yeah, and I might double check. You check me if this number's right. I think the increase from last year to this year is roughly $5 million, and what that is the per pupil amount of, it's listed as an expense, but it's essentially the money that follows the student as they transition to a charter school. So it's not, we're not really spending the money. It's money that comes to the city through the district to the charter school.
I mean, there's some debate about that question.
Sure. But that is, I mean, to your other point on the trend line, it is higher, that increase is higher than it has been in the previous years because there have been more students enrolled in charter schools. On supplies, relatively little change in that line. On capital, that's a mix of things, but one of the big things are like computer purchases. So we've purchased a significant amount of computer equipment through over the past few years, and we can actually, before I close, I'll flip to some of the investment slide we talked through last time, because I think it's important to remember a lot of the investments that have led up to this point and that we're sustaining. But we'll continue to purchase and invest in technology, but we'll be able to take advantage of some of the stimulus dollars and other things to make some purchases in this area. Three things that will affect, and part of the reason we want to come back next month, knowing that these can have impacts on the overall budget plan. But state aid, we know that this is dependent on the legislature passing that in June. There is a proposal that has a kind of a hold harmless provision for districts that's kind of been a nationwide, but certainly a phenomenon in Rhode Island, where districts have seen declines in enrollment. So, we're optimistic that will pass, but it will obviously be up to the legislature to do that. City revenue contribution, we're in ongoing conversations with the city, but any changes there could materially impact our revenue, and therefore we would have to adjust the expenditure plan that we put forward. And this next one, and it's actually a kind of a preview for next finance committee, is one of the things that we want to be prepared for is how do we attack and address the long-term cost drivers in the district, so that what we see over time is costs grow at a slightly higher pace than revenue, but over time that gets wider and wider. So you need to find ways to address things, whether it's transportation, benefits, just the kind of district footprint. Like, those are the things we need to look at. And we had some good work last year by Ernst & Young to give us a kind of a good 5-year projection of our finances. And now the next phase, which from whichever vendor that we get a response from, but what we expect to have it in time for next finance committee, will help us over the next year really look at those areas that have been identified as key cost drivers for the district, so that we're in a position next year to make changes to address them. Last, I'll just highlight again to give us the arc of where we've gone, where we've been, and where we're going. Today, if you look at the May 18th, we are talking through the ordinances. We'll submit our consolidated resource plan to the Department of Ed. We'll share our detailed budget book June 8th, so that will be in advance of our next full school board meeting. So that could be used as another piece of information that we'll talk through next time. And then we'll be back with our friends at the City Council at some point in June prior to the Commissioner approving the spending plan in July. Rather than going, we had a few slides in the appendix to talk through, again, just to kind of bring up some of the investments that we've made. Again, mostly what we're talking through here is local dollars, so it doesn't cover the full extent of our budget or of our investments, but I'm happy to point to that later in the slides, but open to questions that people have on the any of the ordinances.
Questions from board members?
I'm sorry.
Please, Dr. Bowman.
Can you remind us what the color green? I see red, green, blue.
Yeah, and is that in the compensation ordinance? Yeah, so at the bottom, so the green is a new position, a red is a deleted position, and then a blue is a changed position. Is that right?
And then there's two columns, the most right, I'm assuming.
Oh, sorry, that's it. Yeah, that's a great question, and we should make it clear. It's a salary range for a position. So one is the lowest end for that. So if you're let's look at a budget officer, the starting salary is 61,513, and it goes all the way through 74,468. So people.
Range is where we could see a salary fall in.
Correct.
But we're not given the exact one for.
Correct. So we might have.
Can't identify.
That's right. So you might. We usually place people based on their either it's governed by a collective bargaining agreement, or it's based on someone's experience that, you know, a higher step you'd be placed at a higher end of that range, or a lower end you'd be placed at lower end.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions from board members? No? Okay, Mr. Scott, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to having this conversation again, and we'll with the budget book and other things in advance, because I know there, you know, as folks have questions about any of these ordinances.
Perfect. I did just have one. It's not a question, but more so a comment. I'm looking at page 11, and, excellence in learning. You have, and so I see the second bullet point, 18 additional guidance counselors at elementary schools. And I just want to add, just given what we heard from students tonight around the need for additional social and emotional supports, I'm curious to see how we could make in or target to have, you know, social workers or some sort of social and emotional support at each school as well. I know it's going to be a challenge, but I think we should certainly, in listening to our students, make a concerted effort, not that we haven't, but to continue to make that effort to make sure that they have that social and emotional support in school.
Yeah, and we can do a couple things. So when we talk about our ESSER spending, there is stimulus dollars. You know, a good portion of that is for social emotional learning and health, so we can include that. And then we can work with the team, because what's always been helpful for me is as I've looked at some of the information about our student supports, is if we get a question about counselors, it's important that we also share the social workers. We have some community-based health specialists who are in our schools. So really utilizing the team approach, and Sandy and her team can speak to it a lot better. But we'll try to share, you know, on the school level, all the different services they have, because it is beyond just the school social worker, the counselor. They often have a lot of resources at their disposal as well.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I think we have to have a motion to continue.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
I-
Yeah, it's straight for you, Joe.
Go first. Okay, so I'm looking at the compensation ordinance. It wasn't printed, by the way, it's online. That's the color-coded document that Dr. Mogo was talking about. This is a comment/question. So is there a group, so we know all about the PTA. What group represents the TAs?
Local 1033. They're the laborers union.
Okay. What I'm seeing here is that if I'm a TA
I'm making less than $30,000 a year. And there's no steps, like that's it. Like, is there like a salary, is like the, Longview TA? So what I'm going with that is that, and that's an ongoing conversation that, we need to have as a state regarding, the folks that are doing the very hard work for everybody else. And, a full-time job where you're making $30,000 or less, and you have the responsibility the shared responsibility of educating our kids. I know we have ongoing conversations with PTU, and we know that we need to take care of teachers better, but we also need to take care of our TAs better and all the other support staff that, keep our buildings going day to day. Like, I've never, for whatever reason, this is the first time that I'm seeing how much TAs make, and it breaks my heart a little bit, because at this rate, they qualify for assistance from the state. Like, I just feel like this is part of the problem that we're having. Like, I mean, it's a cycle of poverty that we're talking about here, with, for employees that work for PPSD. Like, I want to continue that conversation for this budget cycle. It is what it is, but I want to know more about what that group is doing to advocate for themselves, and also how we can advocate more for them, because that's just, that's that's shameful, I feel.
I don't disagree with you. So we are in negotiations with 1033, and we've actually, I'll say I'm optimistic. Prior to the kind of contract negotiations, we had worked with them on both providing additional compensation, but opportunities for individuals that are advancing to teaching roles. And it's not all about just paying people more so they become teachers, right? I hear the point about paying people fairly, but I do think, we absolutely need to grow our own talent, and it's hard to do it when you pay people at this level. So that's absolutely something we're looking to change in this negotiations with 1033.
Zach, is there a shortage in TAs? I'm sorry, Dr. Goldberg. Is there a shortage in TAs in the district?
There is, yeah, I'd say. And I mean, there's a lot of funky stuff going in the labor market. So in a lot of our positions, but when we look at TAs, we are seeing shortages. And so that's an area where we are looking to find a way, particularly for entry level, because I think that's where we see some of the challenges, because there are oftentimes when people, as they move up, they're also serving as bus monitors for another hour, and that actually makes their compensation maybe not where we all believe it needs to be, but at a more reasonable level. But for our entry level staff, it can be hard.
They're competing against Target and Walmart. They're paying $20, $25 an hour.
And with inflation as well.
And I was just going to say, I know we have some teacher academies, and then I'm going to stop Dr. Goldberg so you can go. And it's probably more of an academics question, but I just want to put it out there. I think with the teaching academy, what we should do, and I think I suggested it also to President Thomas, when students go through with the teaching academy for Providence Public Schools, I just wanted to know, is there sort of like a thought process of those students that graduate Providence Public Schools, we're able to hire them if they want to become teachers, and then I believe they get paid to go to school if they're TAs. Is there a way we can hire students that are very interested in becoming a teacher, hire them as TAs, and then they go through with the program and go to school to become a full-time teacher?
That's absolutely something we can do, and I think we just need to formalize the process more, because that's actually like absolutely the right path, particularly if someone graduating can see a stepping stone to TA to teacher. It's absolutely something we should be investing in.
Thank you. And I just wanted to put that out there also. And this may be, I think, more of a school board question. Well, not question. We could talk about it later. We can table it, but sort of creating a CTE committee. I believe we have it in the bylaws. I think these are the discussions that we should definitely have in a CTE committee. So I think that that's very important. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well, just to throw it out, I mean, we're in the early stages of thinking about this, but states like Tennessee have taken an apprenticeship approach to teaching, which allows them to tap into some pretty significant Department of Labor funds. It requires a lot of coordination between the state and institutions of higher ed, but it provides like a sustainable funding source for these pathway programs, because we've been doing a little bit of one-off with the Equity Institute and gosh, what's the it's escaping me, but with a few organizations, but this, can provide a more sustained path. So that's something we're in the early stages, and Tennessee, who's kind of the leader in this, had just went through with it a few months ago, and we're trying to figure out if it's something that can work in Rhode Island.
Dr. Goldberg, did you want to jump in? Was it? No.
Yeah, we have some questions from the JSEC students today about after-school programs being decreased, and also some questions from our homeschool parents here about opportunities to participate in more enrichment programs. Is that traditionally funded through the district funds, or are we looking to fund that through ESSER, and are those programs coming back? Can you give us a little?
We can get back to you, and you can correct me, but I think a lot of our after-school programs have typically been funded off of Title I. So our not the local dollars, but those dollars haven't been decreasing. So my hope and my hunch is that the those programs going away isn't because money has dried up, but perhaps because providers, maybe through COVID or something, have dropped off. But we can look into. I mean, they gave some hard facts, right? It was like 15 or 20 down to 6, and we can. Worth in figuring out, is that they're having, if it's I don't think it's a funding issue, because that funding really hasn't changed, but we can follow up.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that.
Okay. I think the superintendent was asking Zach if TFA was the other partner that you were thinking of.
We certainly work with TFA for like some of our teacher programs, but it's on the tip of my tongue. But there was another organization that does 1 through 1033, but another that is offers bachelor's programs for individuals who are currently TAs.
Gotcha. Okay. Additional questions or comments from board members? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Next on our agenda is presentations. Item 25 is a FY23 budget presentation, which Scott, you are.
Yeah, sorry, that was the. Was
that 2 of this?
Yeah.
It should have been.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, President Thomas, we should have a motion and a vote to continue the.
Yeah, to item 24. Okay, and that was
essentially that was supposed to be one item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry about that.
So is there a motion to continue item 24 FY23 local budget ordinances? Motion's made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Goldberg. Yeah. All those in favor, signify by aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. So that brings us to our final, our only presentation then for the evening, correct? Which would be the turnaround action plan update presentation, or Mr. Scott, do you?
There's a wellness presentation.
I don't have. Yeah, but I have the turnaround action plan update first, and then the health and wellness. Do you want to do health and wellness and then turnaround action, or is there no turnaround action?
We have turnaround action.
Which one do you want to? I have turnaround action first.
Yeah.
Do you want to go with that one first and then health and wellness?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
All right. So we'll walk through a presentation that we gave at the Senate Oversight hearing. And if you've listened in on those, what we'll do oftentimes is dig into a few areas that are key in the turnaround action plan and go into depth. And the 2 that we went through this past time were world-class talent, as well as student performance indicators. So myself and Ms. Jackson will be going through those. And so this will be the same presentation that we gave not too long ago, but we'll have, if there are questions on anything that's been updated or changed since then, we're happy to go through it. So world-class talent, obviously a core pillar of our turnaround action plan with metrics that span a number of areas, but I think we always like to start with the vision because it really grounds our work. So the vision of that pillar is that all Providence school students will attend a school staffed by highly effective teachers and leaders who reflect the community's diversity and are singularly focused on student growth and achievement. And we'll touch on a few of these metrics throughout, but obviously key metrics here are increasing the percentage of staff classrooms that are fully staffed at the start of the year, increasing the percentage of educators of color in the total educator workforce, increasing teacher attendance, especially those who are present 90% of the time. And the last one I'll mention is just increasing the percentage of teachers holding and using the ESL and bilingual dual language certification. So starting with hiring, given that we're in the throes of that right now. So one of the things we know both from national research as well as our own experiences in Providence is that early hiring is a key lever for change. So that in 2020, we took steps shortly after the state intervention to move the hiring timeline up a fair amount to the end of March. And what that allowed us to do is that 60% of positions were posted by the end of March compared to just 14% the year before. Historically, why that's important is that 90% of positions posted in March are filled by the start of school, compared to just 57% of those posted after June 1st. And that makes, if you think about it, it makes logical sense. You have more time to hire. It's during the school year when lots of people are around. And it's really those late vacancies that arise in the summer that can be challenging because not only are the kind of candidate pool is fairly depleted, but it's oftentimes logistically hard to hire. And so when we made this first change I'll actually direct us to the chart on the right, what you'll see is in the first year, the year prior to intervention, positions were posted in May the year before, and that led to kind of a record high, or at least the highest number of vacancies in the past few years to begin the following school year. When we moved that timeline up a fair bit earlier in the spring of 2020 to the end of March, that allowed us to have very few vacancies to start the school year, and that was in the school year beginning 2021. And this year we did have a rise in vacancies from where we were before, fortunately slightly lower than that 2019-2020 school year, but that in part was due to a later hiring date. So one of the things that we are very excited about this year is through a change in the contract, we were able to post far earlier than we ever had before. So all of our positions were posted for internal and external candidates for hiring on March 7th, which was months ahead of where it was typically done historically, and even a few weeks before what we've been able to do a few years prior. So what that's allowed us to do is since March 7th, and these numbers have updated a bit since we presented this. So, when we presented it, we were at 213 hires. We're now at 250. And that breaks down between roughly 179 internal hires and 71 external hires. And it's important to note that some of those, a portion of those internal hires are staff who are moving from school to school and transferring. But a sizable portion are also those who have been maybe displaced from their position and then rehired at their school or hired at another school. So those individuals are filling positions. They aren't moving, by moving, creating a vacancy. So that has allowed, those hires have allowed us to close a significant number of positions. I don't have the updated hires in process, but I can get that. But we are excited that we are seeing continued upward trend in our new hires that identify as people of color. So if you remember, the kind of composition of our faculty is 22%. So we're excited that 29% of new hires are people of color. Obviously, we need that number to be far higher as we continue to work for our turnaround action plan goal.
Jack, can I ask you a question?
Please.
The issue also, at least anecdotally, is people departing. Do we know how many people departed and how many teachers left or something like that? I don't think so. And what percentage of them are identified as people of color?
Yeah, I can get.
I'm just curious how we're moving the needle overall, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing well on our new hires, but at the same time, we're also losing a lot.
Yeah, I would say I'll get the exact numbers, but if I recall, the proportion of teachers leaving roughly reflects the overall faculty percent. So it's something like 20% of those who've left, 20 or 22%. So we have, the number of incoming staff of color is higher than the outgoing number of staff. But to get that, our target is to increase the total faculty, change of faculty. I mean, you got to really get those far apart, like really high on the new hires and very low. So that's what we've been able to bring in more teachers of color than have left, but we need to keep moving that number in both directions. But big takeaway here is even though we started this year with a fair number of more postings than we did the prior year, we were ahead of where we were at this time at the beginning of May. So we're excited about this early hiring has allowed us to kind of get out of a hole in terms of vacancies that we had to start. Talk through a few of the things we've done to kind of take advantage of early hiring, but also a more comprehensive strategy has been not only posting early, but offering early contracts. So we were able to sign roughly 16 people to commit to the district in January before jobs were posted. So these were people in special education, math, school psychology, social worker, areas that we didn't know exactly where maybe the positions would be, but we knew we would need people. So we had them locked in before those contracts were up. And many of those people have already been hired, obviously, as postings have gone up, but we have a few that we can still have interview and be accepted at schools. And we're continuing to do this. We're kind of taking a two-pronged approach. Obviously, people continue to interview at schools, but we've leaned on Sandy and her team has done an exceptional job of working and trying to hire great special education candidates that come through, even if they haven't yet interviewed at schools, so that they can get an early contract from us and have security for next year. Part of what's allowed to do this is some pretty aggressive incentives. And to the conversation we had earlier, I think one of the things we've seen and what the data is borne out is our senior teacher salaries tend to be a fair bit higher when you look nationally. They stack up pretty well, and that's great. We don't want to lower them. We probably should pay everyone more. So, but on the top end we do all right. It's on the lower end where we struggle and where we aren't as competitive. So we're hopeful that these incentives can help differentiate us and bring people who might not have thought of Providence about the kind of the incoming salary challenges that some people face. So for many people, we've tried to build in kind of stacking incentives. So for anyone who's hired into a hard to fill area, math, science, special education, to name a few, receives a $5,000 bonus. If they commit to us early, that means commit without knowing exactly what school they'll go to. They'll get an additional $2,500. And then obviously people with experience bring a lot to the table. So those with 3+ years of experience get a bonus on top of that. So people can make a significant amount for committing to the district, particularly for those who commit for multiple years. So I don't know if we noted that up here, but we do provide people who commit for up to 3 years additional bonuses as a way to incentivize retention. I won't go through all the rest, but we have increased our Esl certification offer to teachers from, I think we may have spoken with you all before. When it was $3,200, it was covering a portion. It is now $8,000, which in most cases covers the full boat of what someone would need to get their certification. We've also been pleased to work with the Rhode Island Foundation on a awesome loan forgiveness program that offers 25 new educators per year up to $25,000 in loan forgiveness. And we've expanded our outreach, trying to expand our reach to not only fairs regionally and nationally, but those at PPSD, so those that are specific to our schools. We've done outreach to 535 partners in colleges, and we've expanded advertising through places like you probably see them on Rip the Buses everywhere, and an expanded social media presence. And we've appreciated the board support, particularly on some of our Handshake and other social media tools that we've used to expand recruitment. One of the things that the Oversight Committee had asked was just looking at vacancies over the course of the year. And so wanted to start with some context around kind of the beginning of the year. And one of the challenges I mentioned earlier was we did have a later posting timeline last year than we would have liked. But one of the things that was obviously in our mind a positive development was that we expanded support roles and promotional opportunities for teachers. So we had more guidance counselors, instructional coaches, and assistant principals. And while that created great opportunities, it also led to some classroom vacancies that triggered the start of the year. So at the start of the year, we had about 123 vacancies in the teachers union bargaining unit. But fortunately, that has declined by over 10 over that time. So as you've seen nationally, there has been what the Great Resignation, as some people noted it, with a lot of districts feeling that crunch. And so while we have seen exits throughout the year, we have been able to continue hiring and actually decrease our vacancies since the beginning of the year. In terms of hiring for principals and assistant principals, it actually has been updated since we were last here, but we did add 9 additional principals to start this year, which was great, but it did lead to kind of a higher need for assistant principal positions. So we did have some AP vacancies to start the year, but those have largely stayed in place, though we do have 3 offers in process, and I think they actually may have been fully executed since we made this presentation. And then we have seen central office vacancies decline since the start of the year. It's a little bit all over the place. It's a little bit all over the place.
Mr. Scott, if I could just jump in. So are you principal and assistant principal vacancies? We have 0. We hired for principal vacancies, or do we still have principal vacancies that were?
Yeah, so for the current year, we had no principal vacancies, and we still have no, we don't have principal vacancies. We do have 1 principal known. I think we had at this time, 1 resignation, 1 retirement. That resignation has rescinded, and he's staying with business, which is fantastic. We do have 1 retirement known. That individual's retiring effective later in the fall. So we have not. I mean, he's still with us today, so it's not a vacancy yet, but we are actively recruiting for his successor. So once we know. There aren't known vacancies at this time, but as they are, I mean, we're already recruiting, knowing that every year, regardless of whether you have vacancies posted, you'll need people. So we'll be prepared as positions open.
Really quick. So when you say we are recruiting, how exactly are we recruiting? Because I know I look on the website probably once a week to see if there's any vacancies in any jobs. Principal, I don't really see anything. I know I hear a lot of people getting new positions in executive level positions. And when they get those positions, I don't see any of the positions posted. So is there a way you guys could walk me through exactly what is the interview process? How exactly are we bringing in world-class talent if nothing's posted?
So if I could just jump in, because Mr. Stevens' question was essentially a question that I was asking as well in terms of, and I don't know if you want to take it now or you want to finish the presentation and let Ms. Jackson jump in as needed. But we're not familiar with the internal process, hiring process. And so I think Mr. Stevens is looking to, as I am as well, learn more about what that internal hiring process is. We're familiar with the external because on the website you have to apply and such, but if you could bring us up to speed on what the internal process has been like for folks that you hired, that'd be good.
Okay.
You want to take it? You want to take it?
Or you can wait if you want
if
to.
you want to
Okay.
finish, but it will be a question.
Okay. The next topic that we were talking through with the Oversight Committee was around teacher attendance. And what you'll see here is teachers, kind of the average percent of teachers out per month. And this is something we looked at and we talked to you, I think, at one of our past presentations about. And one of the takeaways here is obviously you kind of see the average, but obviously some great variation. So when you look at the orange line on the left-hand side, that's the school with the highest percent absent, and the lower blue line is the lowest percent absent. And then when you take that kind of from the student lens, on the average number of absences per teacher for the year to date, that leads to some students with very different kind of experiences. So some that have you know, 7 or 6 absences per teacher, and some that are closer to 20. So what we're trying to do, and I hope the board saw when we, you know, recognize places like 360 who've done a fantastic job. We want to acknowledge that, talk with the principal, understand, you know, that being one metric that we look at. So acknowledging that and celebrating that, but then also where there are concerns, trying to identify those and address them with individuals and with school leaders.
And are we looking to loop in terms of learning from those schools that are doing well? I mean, it's important to celebrate those that are doing well, but it's also important to feed that experience back into other comparable schools and they can learn from them. I'm just curious what that process looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still learning, you know, with for lack of a better term, what we hear often is those schools that have high attendance, it's having a strong culture, and culture is not, it's hard for someone to distill what that is. Obviously you need to have a strong leader, but it's not, you know, and I'm not going to speak to 360 in particular, but in other schools, it's not, you know, it's not a school that just has a school leader that everyone likes. Like, that doesn't lead to attendance. It's one that people respect and listen to, and you know, hopefully likes as well. But that it takes, it's often comes from, you know, some of it is the culture of the school, but leaders are only, you know, one part of that culture, right? And obviously one of the 40 or 50 individuals in the school. So one of the things that are important, you know, a lot of what this comes down to is individual choice, you know, an individual's choice about whether they want to come to school, and not necessarily just the other people in the building who are, you know, not just the school leader, I'd say.
I have to assume that, I mean, I'm assuming it's not unique to Providence, I'm sure it's not. So there's got to be kind of best practices literature out there, which I'm not familiar with. I know that you were either, but I guess what I would hope we're doing is trying to draw that information, best practices within the district, but also in other urban districts, you know, so we can break down the variables that the schools with low absence rates that have.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard with a combination of parents and six and a contract. And the culture is hard to quantify, but the data set's pretty long.
This has been, you know, a concern in the district for quite some time, and since I've been on the board. At one point, convened a committee to look at what we could do to increase teacher attendance and ask some of the teachers to be a part of it. One question that I have is in terms of the district documenting absences. So can you speak a little bit, Zach, about, you know, how our administrators are doing in terms of documenting absences, identifying patterns of absences, and what that next step in that process is?
Yeah, so I can speak to a specific example. So obviously one of the things that we agreed on in the most recent contract was more stronger language on patterns of abuse. And so we sent documentation out to individuals who took sick days right before and right after that kind of were concerning and were a pattern. And then we followed up with school leaders to potentially, you know, impose discipline if it turned out that it wasn't warranted. But, you know, I think some of this honestly is educating our, you know, educating staff across the district of, you know, what is often, you know, referred to as past practice. Like I thought I couldn't talk to you about your attendance, or like I thought I had to, like, people didn't know, in some cases know exactly, were maybe misinformed about what the contract allowed people to do, or what that you could, you know, take a sick day, you know, whenever. And so some of it has just been educating people on the contract, because oftentimes people are used to what they've heard as past practice, and just, oh, I don't have to approve anytime someone requests professional development. I can actually say, no, I need you in that day. So we've been trying to educate people on really taking advantage of the things that are already there. And again, and that works on both the supervisor and the employee side, because I think there's been a history of kind of lax.
My hope is that, you know, with the with the principals documenting these occurrences, that hopefully it's something that the district can work with the teacher or the union to mitigate. But certainly looking at some of this data is alarming, and I was thinking about the holidays and some of the struggles that the district was going through in terms of attendance. And so it's always at the top of my mind, and I know it's on the top of the superintendent's mind as well, in terms of we really want to have our teachers in the schools, so our students are learning. We are constantly pushing our students to get to school on time and to be in school daily, with the expectation that teachers and support staff will be there with them. But I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I say, it is going to be a culture shift for some of these changes. So when we sent some of those letters out, we got people who are really upset. How dare you send a letter? And it's I can understand how sometimes receiving those letters can feel a certain way, but we take this very, just like you're saying, we expect students to be there, and we need to have raise expectations for kids as well.
Yeah, and I know that we're not talking about a large majority of folks, right?
No.
I know that we're not talking about a large majority of our teachers. So I want to be fair in having this conversation, but these numbers are alarming, and we need to continue to do what we can to mitigate these things, particularly as we move out of the pandemic, and the expectation is that students are back in school, full time.
Sure.
Are there additional comments or questions from the board members?
Zach, if I interpreted this correctly, just looking at the bar graph on the right, that at this elementary school 5, the average number of days that the teacher is out at that school is 21 days.
That's correct.
So the average teacher is out for essentially a whole month for the school year. But that's to date. So from September to now, or
Correct.
the entire school year. So from September to now, that's
Right. So it's even, if you thought, if you were thinking this is it's actually 20 days through April. So it's a lot.
That's a lot. And our kids are having very different experiences. And you look at the elementary 5, that's 3 times more absences than elementary 2 or 1, with a lot of mislearning. And the middle schools aren't represented here because
These were just when we looked at the highest and lowest rated rates. It turned out that the highest 3 were high school, or lowest 3 were high school, 2 elementaries, and then the highest 3 were 3 elementaries. So it just happened that our middle schools fell somewhere in between these things.
How many sick days are teachers entitled to in the contract?
Well, they get 15, but it accrues, so they can accrue over time, and also have personal days and professional development days. And I think that one of the things we've seen here compared to other places is, while the number of 6 days might be the same, when you add in all the onesie twosies, it actually ends up being pretty significant in terms of the amount of discretionary leave that people have. And one thing, just to connect back, that as we were talking, part of the reason those letters, and again, while it's not a pleasant topic, why they're important, is because culture also comes from when when I'll speak as an employee myself, when you see a peer doing something and not being held accountable like that, when that person, that is what makes things hard. And so it's making sure that we're addressing it with the teacher, not just for their kind of their behavior but it impacts their peers as well.
Yeah. Additional comments or questions from board members on that slide?
I'm just wondering, so there is a team, there's a group of people that are looking specifically at teacher absences.
Yeah, so
And is PTU a part of those conversations?
They're not part of the team that's looking and analyzing absences on a daily basis. I mean, it is something we'd be obviously happy to talk with them about during at our bi-weekly meetings with them.
And do you, I mean, if a person calls out, they call out, but is there any way of finding out or digging a little bit more as to the nature of the absence? Like, why are they absent? Is it just because, or is it because of a mental health issue that they're having, a medical issue? Like, I'm wondering if a committee, whatever that looks like, can tap into that, because, from my understanding, you're looking at March is a high time for people to be out. Why is that? We understand right before and right after school vacation week. Why in the middle of March? I don't know, just some like getting to the root of the why are they out, and can the school community address it somehow? If it is a mental health thing, if it's the condition of the school, if it's I don't know. Like there's all kinds of reasons why. But when it's trending that way in a specific month in specific schools, why is that? And then the other comment is going back to getting some PTU support around this. I understand that the relationship is what it is, but at the end of the day, these are their constituents, right? And so if it's an organization that values a profession and wants all members to, serve at their best, they should contribute to this conversation. They should be supporting this conversation also.
And I would just add by saying, you meet with the PTU leadership bi-weekly, which I think is appropriate. I would suggest maybe bringing the data to those meetings to share with them. Hey, last month, this is what the data showed in terms of teacher absences, right? Broken down by school. So they can go back into their colleagues and have that discussion internally. So I'm not sure, I don't know if we're sharing that data, but just a suggestion, it may be a good idea to start bringing this data to those meetings to share with them.
Zach, have you guys spoken to PTO about this?
Each year we've seen over the past few years some significant challenges towards the end of the school year with personal days, and personal days will being taken in June. It's something we tried to negotiate and change in the contract. We didn't reach agreement, but we've shared that data with them this year because we're again concerned about that being used. So we did send them. We're trying to be proactive and work with staff to have days not being taken all on the same day. Again, we share that data, and I just think we don't always see eye to eye on the right solution for it, on how to solve it. That's not because I don't think they genuinely believe they want people in school as much as they can, but we've disagreed on the solution to some of these in a meaningful way.
I want to be honest, because the PTU holds the district accountable for a lot. So this is your chance and the district's chance to hold the PTU accountable and say, listen, yes, it's in your contract, but students need to learn. So make sure you mention this, make sure you bring this up so we can get this situated, because students aren't learning when teachers aren't in school. And I have no problem with intervening on that, okay?
The other part is that, the part of their bargaining unit that is in school is working harder, because the other part of the bargaining unit is not in school. So they should have an incentive, but they should have an incentive to come to the table to talk.
Additional comments, questions from board members? Okay, Mr. Zach, please, if you want to proceed.
And I'll move through. I know we want to have time for the other portions of the presentation as well, but this was the last one was around a little bit around retention and exit interviews, and I know that had been a topic of conversation, and we're fortunate. The Annenberg Institute has been a partner in looking at and giving us kind of candid and just frankly looking at the data to understand what's going on in Providence when it comes to human capital. So one of the areas they did look at was around retention. And one of the things they've seen is, historically PPSD has had very high retention when it comes to other urban districts around the country. And while it's declined slightly over the past few years during the pandemic, it is still on par with most of our nearby urban districts. It's ahead of Boston, right around other mass urban districts, and slightly below Rhode Island districts, but still on the upper end of what you see in urban districts nationwide. When you look at retention, and I know this chart, as I've presented it a few times, is not as clear So I'll try to do my best to explain it. But on the right-hand side, what you'll see is declines on that red bar, which represents the most recent year, declines in turnover among our early career teachers, but a slight increase in turnover among our late career teachers. And so, that's been a interesting trend that I think Annenberg helped us uncover. But, I think it is one thing that we've, obviously we want to retain our strongest teachers, but over time, Providence has had fairly high turnover among early career staff, so we're excited to see that it is trending in the right direction. Yep.
If we have 138 early career teachers, that's the average end of the 4 years there. 1/4 of them are leaving.
Yeah, I mean, it's high. It's not too dissimilar from what you look in many professions, but also in education in general, that the people when they leave, it's off, first year you have much higher attrition, and that goes down pretty significantly over time. But what we've seen is, in other years that have been 29%, 31%, now it's down.
Yeah, so it's better. That's good. Do we have any sense of how that breaks down in terms of how demographic identity and whether I want to make sure we're supporting, newly hired faculty of color in particular. Just curious where they are.
We can look. What I do know is our early career teachers are more diverse than our later career teachers. So I would want to, break it down a little more. But by the nature of our early career retention going up, that's going to help because those people are more likely to be people of color. We do bring in national context here, and what this is obviously like a look at teacher morale across the country. And this is based on a survey that had been done, the MetLife survey of American Teacher. Now, it stopped for several years after 2012, but what you'll see is that line kind of in the upper 30s and 40%, and then declining down to 12%. So this has been a nationwide issue in terms of teacher morale that people are seeing across the board, and that we're trying to reckoning with as we're looking at our own data and looking at why people are leaving the district. So one of the things we've done is stepped up our efforts around exit interviews. So I won't go into great detail on this, aside from saying we are trying to take a multi-pronged approach here in terms of sending people surveys, if that's the way people want to engage in an exit survey, but exit interview, but also offering every individual who leaves the opportunity to have a phone call or in-person interview with someone, if that's the way they prefer to go. And then for those who we don't get through either of those, we're following up with additional emails and phone calls to do this. So what that's allowed us to do is have roughly 50% of those individual PTU members who've left, who've resigned over the course of the year, have received and provided an exit interview. All of them have been offered one, but we're excited that 50% it feels like it gives us a pretty good sample size for what people are feeling, and we know that's an increase from where we were before. So that's allowed us to get richer data.
After a teacher leaves the district, what's the process to follow up with them to get an exit? So if you weren't able to get the information while they were still with the district, they already have left the district, is there a process? Do we have a number of outreaches that we do either by phone, email, etc., to be able to capture that data?
So we'll do a few things. We'll send a batch every once in a while if people haven't responded, a postcard with a QR code so they can scan it with their phone and then take the survey that way. But we're also doing follow-up phone calls. So we've tried to get hold of everyone, and if oftentimes we might get someone who answers and says no thank you, and we'll kind of stop then. Sometimes, unfortunately, if a phone number's out of date, we can't get a hold of them, but typically we're trying to get them multiple times. Just a few high-level kind of pieces of data that we have on people leaving the district. So when we've asked people would they recommend, about a third of people leaving would recommend PPSD. slightly higher at 43% said they would not, with a decent portion around 22% in the middle. So that's the general sense of folks who are leaving and what their opinion is of whether they'd recommend the district or not. When we look at this, obviously a lot of things that are in play here. And what you'll see is in most cases, many people have a number of reasons or multiple reasons, and it's typically not just one reason why they're leaving the district. And so the numbers here next to the different categories are what kind of the number of times it was mentioned by different employees. So we'll talk through each of these in turn, but these were some of the kind of buckets of themes we had for people leaving the district.
Real quick, are those categories self-reporting, or they check off boxes?
So it's a little bit of both. So in the survey, it's a little easier for someone to check, say like of these 4 things, and they'll select that. The other ones, we would take interview notes and then kind of code the interview and say this one mentioned compensation. So we then take those together, and that's how we get these categories.
Because just that first one, which is job requirements and demands, and then climate and culture, I feel like they're probably talking about the same thing. Like a person might, it's not because this job is too hard, job requirements and demands. It's more like I didn't get the adequate support they needed. So I'm just wondering, how we're asking the question to get a true response.
So let me segue to the next one, because what those categories are, like when we ask people, like, was it the job? I'll pull back up the survey, but we don't ask, like, was it the job requirements and demands? It's often these more discrete things that we tried to bucket into a larger category. So when we said job requirements and demands, that was in some cases things that hopefully are temporary, like are kind of more temporal, like say COVID-19 and how the kind of stress that comes along with that. We've seen some increases in challenges, student behavior and that impact on teachers, but obviously some longer term, like deeper challenges that people have addressed are raised, like the demands of the profession, the approach to curriculum and instruction, and the desire for greater support and mentoring. So I would say, some of these, to be honest, we have to sort through, because I'll give you an example, like the approach to curriculum and instruction. Some of these may be valid feedback that we need to take and adjust how we're doing things because of the feedback we receive. But sometimes it's just going to be a fundamental. There might be a disagreement between the philosophy of what we're doing as a district and what the teacher believes in. And I think we have to be realistic as a district and turn around that as we make changes, there's not everyone, even reasonable people can disagree, and there might be people who leave just because they disagree, and we need to part ways. But things we're doing here around supporting our new teachers through teacher ambassadors, offering training through the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and providing more professional development and school-based instructional coaches to support during the school year. And more to come around social emotional support for teachers in schools and expansion of new teacher supports.
Mr. Scott, if I could just jump in with 2 quick questions. Approach to curriculum and instruction. Are we engaging with teachers in terms of that approach, so they feel like they're part of the approach versus this is the approach that the district is taking and we want you to take it and run with it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think we are. So when we are vetting, when we've done our curriculum purchase, Eureka, some of our curriculum purchases, there are teachers on those committees. Now, it's certainly not every teacher in the district, but for our purchase of ARC, part of that was spearheaded when the superintendent was at Leviton and the success they had there. But I know at that time, the team had gone through, and we've done that with our science curriculum that we're doing this year. So we do try to take into account teacher voice. And part of that too is during professional development at the beginning of the school year, and we hope throughout the school year, so that it's, even if it's not, so that it's not just here's your curriculum, teach it, but actually giving people the support they need to implement it.
And then my other question, and thank you for that. My other question was the last bullet point there: desire for greater support and mentoring. And what sticks out to me there is the and mentoring part. I think it's certainly really critical that we have the right mentoring in place for our teachers. And I know we were talking about some funding that the district had got from Brown for sort of like, you know, wraparound services for teachers of color and things of that nature. So my question is, are we as a district still looking at bringing in, what are we doing externally to support this? And then what is the plan internally to support this as well?
So I'd say a couple things. First, on the kind of support front, we do have, you know, prior to this year, we've just had coaches at the elementary level. So instructional coaches, people who are providing people feedback on their kind of their craft. And we now have those elementary, middle, and high. So that's one area for support. On the mentoring, we tried to, you know, add what we heard from teachers before is I have someone who, you know, in an old model, I have someone who comes into my classroom once a week, coaches me on my how to do instruction, but like I'm trying to figure out how to navigate my school. Like I'm a new teacher. And so part of this was a teacher ambassador program where every school has a new teacher ambassador. That person's kind of charged with welcoming new teachers to the school. And it's really more of a mentoring approach. It's not about me coaching you about your practice, but maybe me showing you the ropes and how to acclimate yourself to a school. On the external support, we are working with TNTP for this coming year to have a pretty robust new teacher institute in a way we haven't had before prior to the start of school, and then throughout the school year. More needs to be done on, and I've seen this in other districts, and something I know we're interested in doing here, and some schools have done it on their own, or more affinity groups, whether within a school or across schools, for people who share a common identity or something to that effect, as a way to build bridges within a school, but also across schools.
Two quick things. One is, if student behavior and discipline is an issue for some teachers leading, we should do more professional development around restorative justice for a lot of our teachers, to feel to be most charitable about it. Maybe some of them leave because they don't know what else to do. They don't know what to do about the issue. So maybe that's one thing to think about. But it empowers teachers, at least in theory, to grapple with the problem in a way that's best for kids. Another way of doing it. But the other question I have was, does any of the stuff we learned from the exit interviews find its way to principals, particularly those principals who have a fair number of folks leave? If I were a principal of the school and then there's several people leave citing some of these reasons, I don't need to know the specific interview, but I assume that's confidential. But I would want that information in case it can inform my practice, or to flip it in another way, inform the way we assess our building if we see recurring issues. I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I'd say, and I'd broaden this to then not just principals, but supervisors, because we do offer exit interviews to all staff. And when we do see trends, we'll have a conversation either with the supervisor themselves or their supervisor, depending on what's most appropriate. And, oftentimes it's a conversation, right? Because anytime you have people leaving, that there's, to be blunt, there's good attrition and there's bad attrition. And so it's sorting through, and oftentimes it's not just one conversation, but it's, hey, I'm seeing something, what do you see? And then if the person doesn't adjust, it's something we have to have maybe take more action on. But that certainly has happened. And it's not just for principals, but other supervisors we have in the district where we see trends.
Thank you, Dr. Santal. Any additional questions or comments from board members on this particular slide?
Just one comment of appreciation, because we've been asking for information on exit interviews for quite some time, and I feel like this presentation is the best presentation that I've seen. And in order to, because really we've only had anecdotal information, people tell us things, but to be able to document it and then use their responses to improve our overall processes and hopefully help with retention is super important. So whoever is doing this work, directly, thanks.
I'll pass that along. So I'll move. I know we got plenty to go through some more, so I'll just wrap up with the other some of the other reasons. Obviously, this was right along with the other two as one of the top reasons, as personal life circumstances, and a few things in here, but it's often I'm moving out of state, a spouse, a wife, a husband is changing jobs, and I'm changing with them. Or there are cases where people have an opportunity for advancement outside of the district. So some of this is finding ways to continue to make Providence more appealing, whether that's through that loan forgiveness program. So there are kind of long-term retention strategies, but something we were excited about the progress we've made so far around offering roles that enable career growth for individuals, whether it's staying in a teaching role as a coach or moving into administration. Certification is one we heard, and that's frankly one we heard early on, and then where we took action was around the cost associated with some of this. And time is certainly another factor, and there's only so much you can do there. But we have one of the reasons we did increase our ESL certification support was in response to the feedback we had received, and we're continuing to offer practice and other support as well. Lastly, and a topic we've touched on a little bit already here is compensation, particularly for early career teachers. So we the sign-on incentives are one of the steps we're taking, but we do need some longer term changes to early career teacher compensation and frankly to our teacher assistant compensation to build that pipeline for these roles.
I'll just jump in, Mr. Scott, and certainly commend the district in terms of its increase in the tuition reimbursement for ESL certification. I know that myself and a few other folks were asking for this, and I'm glad that the district was able to make it happen. My last comment would be just on the climate and culture slide here. I would add, I know that the superintendent has his newsletter that goes out spotlighting different PPSD employees, and it's great to see that. I would add that PPSD Cares could also be part of the long-term goal. I know we haven't done it in a couple of months, and hoping to resume next month and continue that. I think it's also a really good way to increase climate and culture here in the district as well. All right. I'll turn it over to the board members with any additional comments or questions. I know Mr. Stevens had a question related to the hiring process. If we could go back to slide 5. Correct. Yeah. So Mr. Stevens alluded to earlier, and I was going to ask as well, in terms of the internal processes. I think these numbers have shifted, Mr. Scott, from what we have here on the slide. So is it 179 internal hires is what you noted is what it is now? It's 149 there, but you're saying it has increased since then.
Yes, this is for teaching roles. So these are teaching roles.
Yes.
When we presented this in early May, it was 149, and I believe it's the total number of hires increased from 213 to 250, and the split I had was 179 and 70.
So my question is, does that mean that there's 179 internal vacancies? Or?
No, so some of those, can kind of break them down into two groups. Some of those groups, roughly 2/3 of those individuals were people who were displaced early in the hiring season, meaning their position was eliminated, and this is finding a new role. So it's not just creating a vacancy elsewhere.
Yeah.
There are the other third are people who might be transferring. I'm going from Central to JSEC, and my getting hired here opens up a position at my last school. So it's a smaller portion of this total now 250.
Okay, so I understand how if your position was eliminated and then you picked up another position, that made sense to me. For the second batch of folks, can you walk us? I think that's where Mr. Stevens is alluding to. Can you walk us through what that internal process is for someone who, has moved up or moved to a different position? How does that work currently?
Yeah, so in this case, for these PTU hires, they are applying to a position this is stuff that's outlined in the CBA. It's what we're obligated to do.
Okay.
They'll go through the hiring committee and then.
Okay, so if Mr. Stevens maybe alluded to non-PTU folks, and I don't know, Ms. Jackson, if you want to jump in here for like are you talking about admin positions? Okay. So or Mr. Scott, if you want to.
I can start. In many cases, in most cases, we are posting for roles and having people apply. I would say for some senior roles, that's often the superintendent may appoint or choose as he's building his after his first year in the superintendency, maybe as he builds his team for those senior leadership roles, appointing people to those roles. But they are in many cases applied for, but in certain cases where we've worked with someone for a long time, we know what their skills are, that might be a place where the superintendent chooses to appoint to a position.
So absent of the folks that the superintendent, chooses to appoint to different positions, the other positions have been posted on the website for folks to apply and go through the hiring process.
That's correct. So, it's not, obviously the superintendent works with all of us I'm not trying to lay that out, lay this at his, this is something that as a leadership team, we all discuss. So yeah, they're either many are posted, but if not, it would be a decision based on, hey, we finally, we're establishing our leadership team, and these are individuals who've worked in the district, we have a track record of success and are being appointed to certain roles.
How many, and you may not start off yet, how many folks have the superintendent appointed versus the number of folks that have gone through the traditional process of,
Yeah, I can look. I think the majority are posted, but I can get the numbers.
Okay.
Those who are appointed are folks who are already here. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to formulate my question because I work at a public university, and almost every position at every level outside bargaining units or inside bargaining units has to be publicly listed for EEO reasons, among other things. So, trying to formulate my question here. If we're appointing people to positions within this building who are not bargaining unit people, without posting the job, are all those people folks who are already here and just changing the job? So are we bringing in people from the outside without any sort of public notice? Ultimately, taxpayers are paying for all this stuff. Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
And I was just going to add to that, and we speak on like world-class talent. And what's kind of common is like the superintendent or say like a mayor, they would appoint normally their cabinet. And then after people that's outside of the cabinet normally would have to go through like a hiring process. But sort of like what you said, can you guys just walk us through like Mark's question that he had?
Yeah, so could you say it again, like the people who are being appointed to positions, are they people being appointed from the outside or people internally?
I guess I'm just wondering, thinking of our sort of public transparency role here as a school board, if we're bringing people in from the outside by appointment without any sort of listing of a position.
And I would add not only from the outside. So, Mark, you are at a public higher ed institution. I was at a private higher ed institution. And when I moved from position to position, I still had to apply. The position was still posted, and I still had to go through an application process, even though, the folks wanted me for that role. I still had to compete against others. And even for our school board here, we have an application process. It's not, oh, we like you now, you want to appoint you. No, it's actually, we have a process that involves a public forum and outside entities, etc. So the question is, because anecdotally, and I think this is what we're getting at, folks move from position to position, whether and they are appointed or moved, transitioned, outside of a formal application process. So if you could clarify that, in those instances, why does that happen? Or confirm that it doesn't. I don't know, but anecdotally, that is what's happening. That folks are in certain positions within the district, they're hired, and then they're either transitioned, moved, appointed, their title changes versus others who have to start all over again and apply for a position.
That's a better framing of what I was stumbling about.
Yeah, I would say in the majority of cases, jobs are posted and applied, but there have been situations where it's a senior position and the superintendent would be appointing them. And I think I would say it's something typical when there's a new administration, a new leadership team being built. But I hear the concern about transparency, and we'll take that feedback.
The only reason why I asked is because I'm a kind of person, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm always on like the school board website, looking at updates on jobs, like literally weekly. I do that. And also the updates that the school board gets. I look at a lot of the new hires that we have, and every position that's on there every position that's on the update, none of those positions was really posted besides one or two of them, maybe like 10 people. So I think that's more of the reason why I asked, so there can be a more transparent process. I know that there are staff members in the district that want to also have the opportunity to come and work for the superintendent. He's a great superintendent. So that's my only thought on that. If we can try to make it a bit more transparent, and then like what they said, it's the taxpayers' dollars. So we want to make sure that we're giving people the opportunity to also apply for district-wide, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm tired now. But district-wide roles, I may say. Sorry. Mr. Stevens with another scheme here.
That's fair feedback.
Yeah. I think it's, I agree with my colleagues and this is not to undermine, the superintendent's decision-making and or ability to take folks and appoint them as he sees fit. But I'd be curious to see the number of folks that the superintendent has appointed in these roles versus those that have had to go through this process.
Well, and the other part of it is that, these vetting processes for hiring exist for a reason, right? Sometimes things are caught that are not meant. We have discussed that much in this district, that people at high levels, that things that happen in the past, that come out in the hiring process, give us what afterwards. So, there is a reason for these vetting processes that serves our interest. We don't want to restrict the superintendent's managerial prerogatives to get the people that have experience to do his job.
And I want to say, you appoint some good people. There's some good people in the room back there that you have appointed. So I do want to congratulate you on that. I do. But if we can, with some roles at least, like yes, some's appointed, but if we can, for some district roles, have some kind of process, because it's only fair that the superintendent appoints who he wants to appoint. But if we can post some roles to give other people opportunities, I think that would be fair for people in the district.
Additional comments or questions from board members? Zach, I did just have one final question for you. And it was related to the hiring fairs. I believe it's slide 8. And I want to start off first by, commending the district, because I do see the advertising of the community for positions here at the district, and I think it's a good tool. I know we tapped into LinkedIn recently to also help with attracting talent. In terms of the career fairs that we've had, because I think we've had, correct me if I'm wrong, there's probably been maybe 3, maybe even 4 career fairs. I'm curious if you could share any data from those career fairs in terms of out of the 3 or 4, were the 25 offers in process as a result of those 3 or 4 hiring fairs, or any other data that you could share with us that would suggest that the hiring fairs have been a success for the district thus far?
Yeah, what I'd share some lessons learned, I'd say, from this year around these, like when we haven't hosted as many historically in-house fairs, meaning like they were for PPSD specifically. So some of the lessons learned we had this year were those that we had early in the year were the most impactful because it was people learning about the district, getting excited. As we had them later in the year, it was people who had already been in the application pool. So the next step is getting them to a school to interview. So one of the things we're going to try to do in some of these future ones is how do we encourage full interview committees to be there so we can be offering, jobs on the spot after interviews are done versus, hey, nice to meet you. Can you come back next week? And we can let's do those interviews now. So I think early on when it was, hey, let's learn about PPSD, those were successful. I think as we got through a few phases, then it was people who just kind of needed to take that next step of being interviewed.
Yeah. I mean, I think the career fairs are a really good idea, and I'm glad to see the district being aggressive in this phase. But certainly looks like you're identifying next steps to make this even more impactful moving forward for us. Yeah. All right. That is all the questions that I had. I'm going to turn over to my colleagues for any additional comments, questions. Mr. Stevens, feel free.
One more. I believe I read earlier, and I think it was true. Some people from HR visited Puerto Rico on a recruitment. Can you let me know exactly who went, and then what was the outcome of that for recruitment in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so they went actually last week. It was Cynthia Ramirez, who's leads our pipeline work in the district, and helps spearhead some of the work we've been doing in the Red Island Foundation. She is from Puerto Rico and actually had a lot of actual personal connections with universities there. So she was the kind of lead there. And then Jen Voro from HR went as well, because we know Jen has expertise in a lot of areas, one of which is licensure. And we knew that was going to be one of the things we had to talk with people the most about as they transferred over. We're coming in. We had a few people who are kind of hot leads that we're trying to follow through and bring in. I think one of the unfortunate timings was there was a little bit of a COVID spike while they were down there. So some of the universities had some spacing requirements, I think. Some good leads. And we actually had some around student teaching that we, we'd been looking a lot at people who were graduating, but we actually learned student teachers were going to be a viable pipeline. I think one lesson learned we would have from this year is, like many things, do it even earlier in the year if we can, because it gives you more time to establish relationships and then build people up and get them excited. So I think we'll convert a few, but the hope is that, and frankly, for getting individuals, particularly if they're bilingual, like getting even one person to me is a win, because we need it's such a high need teaching group that we need. So we're looking to convert more than that, obviously, but I think next year we'll try to, if indeed we do this again, we try to go earlier in the year.
So was anyone interested in coming to Providence, Rhode Island?
Yeah, there were like 2 or 3, and I can get their specific names. There were, some of them were might be a phys ed teacher who, again, we're super excited that they want to come, but not as, not a math or a science teacher. So, but we did have 2 or 3 people who we think will convert.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Any final thoughts or questions from board members?
So out of those 535 partnerships, right? 535. What I see there is an opportunity to not only grow that number, but strengthen that relationship for next year. So to your point, starting this process earlier and adding to the conversation, not just hiring the students that are on their way out of those institutions, but also talking to those talking to the institutions about how they're recruiting their students and what curriculum they're using to prepare those students to enter the workforce. We've talked about that for, I feel like, the entire time I've been here. How do we strengthen our relationship with teaching institutions from the start? To recruit more students of color to enroll in their program, to retain those students, and then to make sure that they're learning and their curriculum is a reflection of our needs, which is a conversation that I feel like we start and then it doesn't go anywhere. So I love the fact that you have those relationships, and so I really hope we can continue and strengthen those for next year and the following year and the following year.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Any additional thoughts or questions from board members? Okay. Mr. Scott, thank you. Our next presentation is Wellness Department presentation, I believe.
Oh, sorry, we're not done.
More tap.
Oh, you
More
still
tap.
have it? Take it away.
So, you're all excited, I'm sure,
Sorry.
right? We're gonna talk about student performance, so yay.
No, don't take, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We have some muffins in the other room. Do
No,
we need
no.
a muffin break?
Excellent. Go ahead, Ms. Jackson, please begin.
Okay, so as we've talked about our TAP metrics and breaking down our TAP metrics, we've also talked about the process and the programs and how we're spending our ESSER dollars to help us get there. We wanted to also let you know how we're doing student performance-wise presently. So this is our data dive as of April. So with our ARC, which is our American Reading Company, that's our English curriculum K through 8. What this chart shows you, this is a comparison from last year at this time to this year, where the percent of students who can read comfortably independently. So you can see we have some significant growth. Now, that doesn't mean that the achievement gap is, but this is really a big step in getting to that achievement gap, is making sure that we're hitting independent reading is a primary lever for moving all of it forward.
What do we attribute that to the curriculum?
I think it's the curriculum. I think it's the curriculum. It's the having a unified curriculum. It's the rigor that is in that curriculum.
Ms. Jackson, my question is, so, and certainly I think this is, we're certainly moving in the right direction. How many of, so for example, how many of the first graders, second graders, third graders does this put on reading on grade level? I know you said we didn't close the achievement gap, but does this at least bring students to being able to read on grade level?
I can get more detail on their specific reading levels, but we know that they're getting more comfortable reading independently.
Okay. Very encouraging.
It doesn't mean they've hit proficiency yet,
Yeah, no,
but it does mean
right.
that they can read on their own without having to have all of it with a companion.
Right, and then I'm not suggesting that this is
Yeah.
saying that they're proficient, but certainly you can see the gains that are being made throughout each grade. And it just led me to ask a question of that, of the first graders, how many are reading on grade level as a result of it. So we can get a Lexile
level.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
What this slide is showing, remember we have talked about average growth. We want to accelerate growth, so we want students to grow more than a year within the school year. So what we're showing here is that we are at, this was in April, so the 0.9 means 9 months growth within the school year. So this was at 8 months. So we can see that any of the charts that showed that it's an 8 or above, they are tracking to where they should be. And we have many that are going above. So by the end of the school year, we're hoping that they could be at least up to the 1.25. And our real target is going to be 1.5 years growth. And this is still, remember, in the school year where we were still hit hard by COVID at the beginning of the year. So this was not complete, consistent instruction as much as we would have, I think we would have seen higher numbers if we didn't have We didn't have the attendance issues, both with staff and students. Here is another example of when we look at the first bar is the RICAS scores from last year. The RICAS scores are broken out into 4 categories, which does not meet expectations, partially meets, and exceeds, right? So meets and exceeds are where we want to be in the green and in the blue. And so we see where our RICAS scores were at the end of last year. Then we go into the middle column. That was the beginning of the year STAR assessment. So we can see here we had 47% of our students were not meeting expectations. So as we have taught them throughout the year, and again, the interim assessment point is in April, where we gave a practice RICAS assessment. And so we can see, and in this case, we do want the numbers to go down because we're looking at the red bar. So we want the red bar to go down, and we want really the green and blue to expand. So we can see that 32% of our students moved out of the does not meet column.
Ms. Jackson, what month is the STAR?
STAR is in September.
September. Yeah. So they took the STAR in September and then tested again in April. And
we had other assessments in between there, but this was our practice RICAS. So we wanted to see, based on all the things that we've been doing this year, if they were to take the RICAS on that day, how would they do? So just as far as understanding the charts what this is displaying, do you have questions on that? Okay, so I'm not going to spend as much time, but I'll go through the other ones because they're all, so this is 3rd grade ELA. The next one is 4th grade ELA, where you can see 34% moved out of the low category. 5th grade is 11%. And again, this is where the achievement gap grows more. We have 6th grade, 11%. 7th grade, 37%. And 8th grade, 41%. This is for ELA, and this is for all grades combined, it's 28%. And now I'm going to switch over to math, which is in the same format.
Ms. Jackson, before you jump over to math, I just have a question. So the gains that students have made here, what are we suggesting to students? What are we suggesting to parents to be able to continue this momentum as we wind down the school year throughout the summer, heading back into next school year? Because I know that there's a number of, programs for the summers for students, but that's not for all students, right? That's for...
We have 3,000 students right now enrolled in our summer program.
Okay. And so for the other
ones,
thousands, what would you suggest to those parents to be able to continue this momentum?
We will be providing summer learning packets to parents, as well as free websites and programs that they can go to where they can do online learning. We're also working on licenses that we can get, software licenses for online curriculum that we can get that students can use independently, where they go on to a program, they take an assessment, and it does an individual path for that student to develop their skills that they need. We also suggest reading on their own grade level as much as possible. If they read an hour a day, it will significantly improve their overall reading performance.
I mean, don't get me wrong, 3,000 kids in summer school is, a good fair amount. Is the district looking to expand summer school seats if there were more parents that were looking to have their students enrolled in summer school?
I can check with the team about, what we have available. I know we've already expanded it by several hundred based on the requests that we had.
Okay.
Really quick, has the district ever teamed up with like the recreation departments?
We do have partnerships with them, and they are also in our schools this summer as well.
Okay, the only reason why I asked, because I know in the summertime, a lot of young adults, they get jobs, summer jobs, but then also a lot of the younger kids that are under the age of 13, they enroll into like camps and different programs for the recreation department. So I don't know if there's a way, probably in the upcoming year or years to come, if we could probably work with the recreation departments and say, hey, listen, can we touch on these certain topics in any way, shape, or form that you guys can, so our students are actually learning? Can we make part of the camp where students, well, not students, that we camp, what are they, campus or something like that, the students will be considered if they could fill out like a packet or do some type of education, because I know when they're in camps, it's mostly activities. So we can probably team up with the recreation department in the coming years to say, hey, is there a way we can continue these young kids that are enrolling into your camp? Is there a way we can continue trying to build their knowledge as it pertains to their education, just to keep it going, because it's a huge drop off. I know when I went to school and it was the end of the year, then I was getting ready to go into the next year, I forgot about everything that happened. So it's a good push that we have 2,000 kids enrolled into summer school, but if we could probably start to work with our recreation centers and YMCA's to try to keep the progress going, I think that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
So one thing, I don't think those camps are free, Mr. Stevens. From what I know, when a parent sends a child to camp, it's usually for 1 or 2 weeks. It's usually for a very specific activity, and unless there's some sort of subsidy, they have to be paid. So I like that idea to just, kind of build those, strengthen those relationships and provide some sort of standard, maybe provide those rec centers with links to what you're already offering parents, the packets and the various website and things like that, so that the rec center can also push along the message. Hey, by the way, we heard that PPSD is offering these free resources, make sure you use them. Are the 3,000 slots for summer school for kids who are on the verge of repeating a grade, like failing, or are they 3,000 slots for kids who have like supplemental learning? So is it like a punitive situation, or is it a continuing your education situation that the 3,000 slots is for?
The high school is more focused on credit recovery, and the K through 8 programming is continued skill development and that extension of time that we were talking about to hit the achievement gap. So, and we have a variety of programs within that. So we have some programs that are focused a little bit more on social emotional development for students that have had, some attendance and discipline issues throughout the year. We have some other programming that is focused more on just your academic development. They all have an academic component, but we're trying to really target students' needs specifically.
It would be helpful just, as we're in the community, people may ask questions. If you could just give us a one-pager with that, what you just said. We have 3,000 slots. These are the different things that they cover. These are the grades. These are the schools or whatever. Here's the link to the resources for parents who have, kids at home, so that we can then also amplify the message. So we're not like, oh yeah, I don't know. Sure, there's summer school, but we don't know what it's about or for or who.
It did go out to Kimbo.
Yeah, we did send it out on Kimbo. It is up on their website. We can give you, additional follow-up information.
Can I just make a quick correction? When we do the summer programs and support, and it's just wordsmithing, we say punitive, sends a negative message. It's resource and support.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any additional comments or questions on this slide before we proceed? Okay, Ms. Jackson, please.
Okay, so same format. This is for math. Math has obviously been a bigger challenge for us, but you can see that we are really starting to make some gains with 16% in 3rd grade. We had 27% in 4th grade, 21% in 5th grade, 14% in 6th grade, 39% in 7th grade, and you can see in English and in math in 7th grade, the students made some significant gains, and 8th grade is 12%. And obviously the complexity of the math in the 8th grade is much higher, and pre-algebra really, so that's a little bit more challenging for our students. And then our overall is 21% in gains in math for all grades, 3 through 8.
Ms. Jackson, given that math is, according to the slides, a little bit more of a challenge, are students given the opportunity to receive some additional supports outside of what they're getting in the classroom?
Yes, so in the elementary schools, they have extended time, so their math blocks are longer. In the middle and high schools, they have a math class and a math intervention class.
And certainly, look at the slides, you can see that there are gains being made. As we go forward, are we going to, is the district looking at increasing some of that out of classroom time support that you identified to assist students continue along this path?
Yes, we're trying to expand our after-school programming, and they also have Saturday academies.
Are these gains like turnaround gains, or is what you typically see throughout the school year? Someone that is naive to this education data.
These are more turnaround gains, from the data that I've looked at. I would also say part of it is once you have a unified curriculum, you're measuring the same things which you weren't necessarily measuring before, as if teachers in schools were doing their own lessons based on their own curriculum. It's hard necessarily to know, which is why you want to measure it against these normed exams like a RICAS, like the STAR, assesses students' individual growth on to their individual growth. The RICAS assesses them against their grade level, where they should be at their grade level. Ready to move on? Another exciting note is that we increased our student participation in AP courses by 700 students. But what's more exciting, it's not just increasing the number of students that are participating in AP classes. We've increased the number of students that are receiving a 3 or above on the AP exams, which gives them college credit. So this is a very big deal and very exciting.
Can we also add that it's not just that it used to be in one school, now we're offering it at multiple schools?
At all of our schools, yeah. So we just want to keep this number going up, and the more students interact at an earlier grade level with the AP courses, that they're very rigorous, but absolutely attainable. You just have to have the opportunity. And so, we just need to expand our course offerings so they have more opportunities.
Ms. Jackson, I'm glad to hear that it's actually at all the schools. When did that expansion happen? Was that?
I would have to do a look back.
Yeah.
I would have to do a look back. We grabbed the numbers from last year to this year.
I think it started pre-turnaround. I'm not sure what Chris and I were talking about, but
Perfect.
Yeah, and it is in turnaround efforts across the country, expansion of opportunities for students to engage in AP classes is really a key lever in helping our students, and especially in their not just being able to get accepted into college, but be successful in college. We don't want them dropping out after the freshman year of college.
Good stuff.
Our attendance, again, we're trying to look at our attendance a few ways. So we looked at 2020, 21, 22, these past COVID years. And so we looked at our attendance. The darker blue and the green
indicate the attendance, and then with the green, we excluded our quarantine absences. Just trying to figure out of the absences, how many of what percent were due to quarantining. Obviously, we're not at our goal yet. This is not to the end of the year, but we still are trying to work on improving our student attendance overall. Our chronic absenteeism, we still need to do quite a bit of work on chronic absenteeism, but you can see the impact of the quarantining was a bigger on our chronic absentee, which, if you're not aware, it's 10 or more absences would put you in that category.
A couple of thoughts, Ms. Jackson. So for chronic absenteeism, I believe at our last school board meeting, we had the folks at Mount Pleasant join us, and we talked about the community specialists that they have. I know that they have a number of community specialists. Are we able to see the correlation between having community specialists in our schools and any movement towards reduction around chronic absenteeism at any of the levels, elementary, middle, or high?
Glad you asked that.
One step ahead.
So I don't have the direct correlation, but we do, this is the first year that we've really had the community specialists. We have attendance teams at the school. Students get referred to their attendance teams. But as you can see, I mean, the big number here is 24,000 contacts to our students. And this is, huge effort on their part and the school teams to do the outreach, to try to re-engage our students, get them to come consistently, find out the barriers, what's happening. Is it transportation? Is it, a family issue? Are they taking care of a sibling or whatever it might be? It's not just come to school. You're not coming to school. It's, trying to help and find out and find ways to support the students into getting to school. We also have our A-Venture program, which we are expanding for next year as well, which, for some of our older students, that now goes 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., where we have some students that are working. So now they have opportunities to come to school mid-afternoon and evening. And we're going to expand that for our students because, as you know, when we moved a number of Mount Pleasant students over to the A-Venture Academy, and Lindsay and I were at their dinner last night, and, we had this talk to several Mount Pleasant students who just love it there, feel like they're excited about their next steps. They feel positive that they're going to be able to graduate and move on.
Ms. Jackson, of the home visits, both in person and phone calls, is the district able to detect any patterns from students related to their absences from school?
Yeah, and that's our next data dive that we have to do. Then we have to start correlating. We've been tracking the data. Now we have to really unpack that student by student to see if we've been able to get any of the gains.
Okay, and I'm very interested in seeing that because I think that what we do next in terms of the services that we provide should be able to address those concerns, right? A community specialist may be a good fit here to address one set of concerns, but we may need to look at some other type of support to address another concern. So I'm really curious to see, because it looks like there's been a lot of outreach from the districts and what it reveals in terms of root causes. Are there any additional questions, comments from board members? I believe this is the last slide for Ms. Jackson, so I'll turn it over to folks if they have anything additional that they want to add.
I have three areas. One, slide 38, AP exams for enrollment. I'd like to know, for example, my day, I had to pay for the AP exam. I don't know if kids still have to pay for these. It's free.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So there's not a financial barrier to them taking the exam. The other question is that right now the chart on the right 1550 students in 2021, 2026, and 2022. That's a great number. I'd be interested to know where these kids go to school, where they attend high school.
Yep.
And are they unique? For example, is it one kid that's taking 5 AP courses? Or is it 5 kids that are taking one AP course, each? And also I'm curious to know what subject matter they're taking the AP courses on. Languages, sciences, et cetera. I'd like a little bit more detail added to the slide for our understanding and also for us to look at, because it's not a secret. We have one particular high school who has a culture of taking AP exams and passing them and using them versus the rest. And we want to make sure that across the board, our high schools offer that for the kids that, are able to take it, are interested in, or are also able to pass it. Then on the other end of the spectrum, I don't know which slide it is, but I'm curious, it's not here, but I'm curious as to know what the district's approach is to kindergarten readiness, preschools. And then also, it's not here at all, but I feel like we've made some pretty good investments into CTE, and we don't talk about it here either. So just to make this turnaround action plan reporting, more robust, so that we know what's happening. I mean, I know great things are happening in CTE, but it's not here.
Sure, we can have Brett Dickens come in and do a CTE presentation.
Okay, great. And again, my question about kindergarten readiness, preschool, how we're preparing students, early on from what we heard from the homeschool families, that early learning is critical. And so how are we preparing the students at the start? Thank you. Sure.
Any additional questions or comments from board members? There being none, I believe Ms. Jackson, now we are finished with this presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Next, we have a wellness department presentation.
Save the best one for last.
Stewart,
Save the best one for last. I'm gonna wake everyone up. I promise it won't be good evening, good morning. I promise. But I'm gonna take my time because this is a great office. Lindsay's gonna get us up. Oh, Lindsay, I took your chair.
No,
Sorry.
You're good.
Oh. All right. Thank you. You're welcome.
Ms. Stewart, thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
Sure, thank you. So, good evening. My name is Sandra Stewart. I'm the interim chief student support officer for the district. I oversee 4 departments, the Office of Specialized Instruction and Exceptional Students, the Office of Multilingual Learners, and I also oversee early childhood and the one I will be presenting today, which is the brand new wellness office. So it really is my pleasure tonight to share this office with you all. It's a brand new office to the district. And I think it's ironic that tonight that we heard a lot of comment from students and, just a lot of other community members about how important SEL and mental health is. So I'm really excited to share this with you today. I also share with you that I've been in the district for over 20 years, I think 25, 26 years. And I have really lived as in my previous role as a building principal for a very long time. I really lived and breathed a lot of the challenges at the school level, which has been put into this office. So really excited to share that. So, okay. So first, I just like to share with you our vision. As an office, we want to ensure that we are providing and promoting and supporting the health and well-being of all of our students. But I also want to note here, it's not just our students that is our focus. It's also our families and it's also the staff.
And I think, from the data on world-class talent, which we just shared a little while ago, I think you see the reason why we need to also focus on the adults in our buildings also. So how are we going to do this? Well, we can't do it alone. It's really working in collaboration with, PPSD staff, other agencies, and community partners through, partnerships around services that they provide to our district that we want to make sure are, one, that they're being effective, and two, that they're culturally appropriate and also responsive to the needs of our community. So who makes up this office? We have the Director of School Counseling, which is Miss Gina Silva. She's been in the district for quite a few years. Our new Social, Emotional Learning and Mental Health Director, and her name is Natalie Fleming. I stole her from RIDE. She was the project aware. I steal a lot of people from RIDE, so I don't think they let me in anymore. But she was actually a psychologist here in the district many years ago, and I was able to get her to come back. So it was a great addition to our team. We have Director of Nursing and Physical Education, Ms. Donna O'Connor, who many of you know, she's been in the district for a really long time. And then the new Director of Alternative Programming and Student Supports, which is Mr. Catone. I'm going to talk individually about each department. I won't take a lot of time, but I just want to share a little bit. Traditionally, counseling, social workers, and psychologists have fell under the Office of Specialized Instruction, and the health office fell into the Teaching and Learning department. So it was very siloed. So it was really my vision in creating this office that we brought all of these groups together, so that way we really create these partnerships and really create these mental health leadership teams at each school, so that they're working in collaboration with one another. Just a few things to share of why we have the SEL office. Well, I think we all know how important SEL plays, especially in academics. And we just saw that data a little while ago. Also, we know that COVID hit, and COVID has really brought a lot of anxiety, depression, struggles with socialization and stress amongst our students, which again, you heard tonight. So that's definitely where the need is. And the new alternative program and student supports held by Mr. Cantone, really he oversees the overaged and undercredited, homeschool, our student affairs office, which is now since been closed, a venture, and also attendance. So I'm just going to go quickly over. I just want to give a shout out to all of our school nurses. Last Wednesday, May 11th, was National School Nurses Day. So I just want to give them a shout out, and just also a shout out to Donna O'Connor, who's been leading the health services department. This has been an incredible couple of years, as you all know, and her leadership has really helped support the health and safety of not only students, but also staff in our building. So I just want to give her a really quick shout out. These are all of the people that report to her. And she also oversees physical education. I won't read this to you, but this is just a quick what the vision and mission is of her department, which is all around, obviously, health and safety. These are some of the areas of which, and again, just bite-sized pieces. They do so much more, but just some bite-sized pieces of what each of the staff members that are in the health service department do. And they work really so hard, as you all know, down to, our childcare workers who are helping support testing. And so I just want to give them a big shout out for all of the work they've been doing. The next is the Social, Emotional, and Mental Health office. So here you'll see Miss Fleming, who's the new Director of SEL Mental Health. She oversees all the psychologists, all of the social workers, included are the leads. And then we have 2 grants.
Understood.
Oh.
I'm just gearing up.
Oh, I thought you were gonna get like, hey, take me up.
No.
I've been waiting so patiently.
I've been waiting to get to the slide. It's my wheelhouse. Yeah.
Okay, I knew you were gonna love it. So we also have the SEL and mental health grant coordinators. One of them is Amy Mello Messenger, who's been helping support that. And then also in this office, we have our counseling, and Ms. Sylvia oversees the specialists, the school counselor leads, and just the overall school counselors.
Ms. Stewart, I just want to jump in with a quick question.
Sure.
Do you have any of your staff here present with you for this presentation? Is Ms. Fleming or Ms. Silva here?
No, none of them could be here tonight, so you're stuck with me.
Okay. I just wanted to, just so we as a board can get familiar with the folks that actually, that you have under you that are doing the work. That was my only.
They actually did come when we did our wellness committee.
Okay.
We actually had them come and present. They just couldn't be here tonight, but they did present. But I'll have them come next time.
Yeah, just so board members can get familiar with the folks in the district that are doing this work. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. So this is Miss Fleming's vision and mission. It was actually probably 2 pages before I made a cut to 2 paragraphs. But as you can see here, really the focus of the office is, and I heard some discussion about this evening, but really this office is really focused on helping support schools with SEL, restorative practices, positive behavioral intervention and supports, formerly known as PBIS, and then also helping them to support, obviously, through those programs, the quality of instruction at the buildings. We're also this office is really focused on building relationships. I heard a lot tonight about culture, and school culture comes around relationships. And when I say relationships, it's not just, student to student, but it's teacher to student, or, adult to adult, adult to student. So all the relationships in the buildings. And then obviously helping to support that really positive and promote school culture. Here are some goals and objectives of the office. One is to really utilize the professional standards set forth by these organizations to support schools. The second piece of this is advocate for positions around obviously psychologists, social workers, school counselors. So we often, talk about how we can increase those supports, and I'm happy to say that this year we have increased. We have increased so that way every elementary school this year can have a school counselor. There were a few schools that were sharing. Next year, every school will have a school counselor, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Here you also see one of the grants that help support, and these are the recommended ratios: 1 to 50 psychologists, 1 to 25 social workers, and the same for school counselors. And I am happy to share that for school counselors, we are at that ratio. And in some schools, we have a few extra counselors. We have college and career counselors there. And to Mr. Scott's point previously, at the buildings, we do have a lot of other community agencies. We have Arise, we have Family Services, we have CYC, we have Providence Center. So we do have a lot of support at our schools around social, emotional, and mental health. Also here, my office is currently building out a universal MTSS framework. And previously in the district, we've had a framework around the academic and behavioral piece. And this year we'll be adding SEL as one of those pieces to MTSS. I'm sure I'll be coming to share that with you soon. So the next one is the school counseling, and I'll just quickly go over here. So school counseling really has 3 focuses: college and career readiness, SEL, and then academic achievement. This year they have been focused, as you know, they're brand new in the elementary schools, and they've really been focusing on Tier 1, which is Caring Schools curriculum that they've been utilizing, which again is very heavily focused on building relationships. and also the zones of regulation for Tier 2, and they've been undergoing that professional development this school year. Also out of the wellness office, I just wanted to share a few things that we've been doing. So we have Project Aware, which has the Let It Out campaign, which I know Ms. Garcia shared our QR flyer that is at every high school. We are now putting them all in the middle schools, and they go in the bathroom. And I forgot a couple months ago, Dr. Montañez and I were on with some students, and they shared how they really loved the QR code because it was something that they could do privately and not have that stigma of asking for help. So we made sure that we made more posters available to schools because they seem to miraculously disappear from the bathroom. So we got a lot to put back. Also, school-based mental health grant. That's a really important grant that helps provide those family services and Providence Center and have clinicians in the building. And that really helps our families because a lot of our families struggle. You know, a lot of them have multiple jobs, don't have transportation to get them to, to get them to their therapy sessions and whatnot. So bringing them to the school is really been a really big support. So that grant helps support that. Also, we're currently looking and researching for some SEL curriculum to implement in our schools. We had a Brown and PPSD event, which I'm going to show in a little bit. And then we've also, again, just to highlight some of our partnerships, we have the College Crusade, which is the Accelerate program, where we provide high school students with who are in their senior year with some college classes. So that's been a really great partnership with the College Crusade. So I'm getting to my favorite part, and this is where we had this great party, and it was a great event. It was our Brown and PPSD May event, and as you can see, it was a first time we brought everyone in our wellness department together, and it was just such an incredible time to see everybody get together. Our nurses, our psychologists, social workers, it just was incredible. We also invited our PPSD interns, who we hope we want to snag and offer positions to. And we tried to woo them a little bit. And then we also invited many community partners. So partners like Family Services and Providence Center, who work in partnership with us. Our wellness committee work groups that we have, we also offered it to them. And then we also offered it to some other districts that partner with us through the school-based mental health. So it was a really great event. We had about 350 people. So as you can see, we had some gifts. That's the table at the top. We had some raffles. We had it at the convention center, so we got fancy. And then at the bottom, you see Amy. She's got some bags. We gave everybody a parting favor. We gave them some professional development books. And we also gave them a copy of their ethics, which was one of the sessions I'll share with you in a minute. So and we tailored those to the specific profession. In the middle, you see school counselor specialist as part of our Let It Out. And we had all decorating, all PPSD mostly, posters of just different people that kids can reach out to. These are posted in our schools. So we had them there. You see JSEC because JSEC students made these incredible artwork about what mental health meant to them. And the social worker at the school, Rose Molina, put them all together, and we display them all around we took over the convention center, FYI. But we only had the 5th floor, but we really took over the whole thing. And then classical high school, not only did we give gifts, but we rocked out with the classical jazz band. As they were coming in and having lunch, they were entertained. So that was great. So there were 2 parts to this day. We were only there for a couple hours, but we had a couple different things going on. So the first part were professional development. So May 11th was the PD day for the district. In the morning, the staff did zones of regulation, and then in the afternoon, we had them come to professional development. And you might be asking, well, how did you get these people? Well, we surveyed all of the psychologists, social workers, counselors, nurses, and said, what are some of the professional development you'd like to see? And from that, we then started to plan, and we came up with our sessions, which I'll go over with you in a minute. And we provided PLUs, professional learning units, for that. And we also provided CEUs, which is something that our professionals need and often pay for on their own. And we took care of that for everyone who attended the event. So we were happy to do that, and they deserved it. So we had Dr. Booth, who is an incredible partner with us. He has done many professional developments. And of course, one of the things that they wanted, no surprise, trauma. So that was one of the sessions that, was a very popular session, probably, I think, full. And then we had Dr. Sarah Keels, and she talked about supporting school teams. And this was something that I had requested because this is the first time we're bringing these 3 groups together, 4 groups really, but to form these teams at schools. And what we noticed is a lot of them were working in silos, and really were craving some, support in how to build these really effective student support teams. So we had an expert come in and talk to them about that. And then we had Dr. Silas Pinto, who talked about ethical decision-making, and that was another really packed session. And then lastly, we had Dr. Renard Beatus, who was the keynote speaker I'll talk about in a minute, who was talking about evidence-based mental health practices, and mostly it was around, I hate to say it, but it was around suicide prevention, and that was really the focus. So how we came to be able to provide this great opportunity was through a partnership with Brown. And here on the screen, you see Dr. Lipset, and I wanted to make sure I said this correctly. He was a faculty member at Brown University, where he taught and was a professor of psychology and also medical science and human development. He passed away in 2021, and his family has made donations to support yearly lectures at Brown. And what we did is we combined, and we had our PD session in the first part of the day, and then in the second half we had the keynote speaker, which is Ms. Beatus, who is there, and then some Brown faculty members joined us, and Dr. Goldberg was one of them, and they joined us for that keynote for the afternoon. So what did people say? And we gave them a survey, and we have a lot of results, but I want to make sure everyone gets home, so I'm only going to pick 2. How satisfied were you with the professional development? And that's about 81%, so that's a great percentage. And then for how many of you are planning to incorporate what you learned in your practice, again, about 81%. And throughout the day, when you walked around and you spoke to people, you heard, just positive things about the event. And I'm going to share what they said. So survey says that many of them felt that it was, an excellent PD. You see that come up a couple times. They really felt supported by the presentations. They felt they had incredible speakers. They wanted again. So I'm going to need your help. They wanted again. So we set the bar pretty high, but they deserved it. So they really thought it was a great day to connect with other, professionals. And there was a lot of additional feedback, but I just pulled out a few. So my last slide is a big thank you. And the big thank you goes to Dr. Goldberg, who called me. I just had gotten the job in November. And she's like, I have this opportunity. I'm not really sure. What do you think? And I'm like, if it's free, I'll take it. So we ran with it, and I met Dr. Buka, who is on the previous slide. He's here in the corner, and he and I and my great team of Katie Graham, Amy Mello, Natalie, really sat, and we've been planning for months. We wish we had more time. We would have probably had fireworks at that point, but if we had more time. But we really, planned a great event. And then I also want to say thank you to Donna, Gina, Mark, and Christine, who really helped support that day. Because as you can imagine, trying to organize 300 people, even though they're adults, is not easy. And nobody ever wanted to leave the jazz band. So they were great. They really helped support. And then the classical jazz band and Alan Raskin, who supported them. And then, of course, the JSEC students for their gorgeous artwork, and Rose Molina. So the last slide, I just wanted to say just an overall, and I wrote notes because I didn't want to forget anybody. Just overall, just a great gratitude I can't even express to, the superintendent, Dr. Martinez, for the opportunity to develop this office, and his support and, his advocacy for students and their SEL and mental health. If it wasn't for, obviously, under his leadership, we would not have this office, so I thank him. And then I also thank Dr. Goldberg and Ms. Garcia and Mr. Stevens for supporting and welcoming me into the Wellness Committee, even though they had no choice, but they still did it wonderfully. So thank you for that. And then, I just wanted to also thank the Wellness Committee work groups. We have these 3 fabulous work groups, the Nutrition, Physical Activity, Healthy Relationships, and SEL, who do so much work behind the scenes that I don't think people realize, and, have continued the work even through all of the leadership changes. So I'm really excited about partnering with this new office with that group to help move a lot of the great ideas and work that they've been working on forward in the district. So that's it.
Ms. Stewart, let me begin by first saying thank you for your hard work and dedication. I think it was last school board meeting where we also discussed all of your efforts that you put into supporting families following the school board meeting before that, where we had a number of folks come in and wanted to have their questions and concerns addressed around various things with students. So certainly want to thank you for your hard work and dedication, and congratulations on the opening of the wellness office, long overdue and very much needed here in the school district. To have 81% of employees say that they are going to take back ethical decision making and trauma-informed care to their schools is huge, and a really good sign that we are moving in the right direction. Certainly offering CEUs for folks, you know how to bring them in when you offer CEUs. I will make sure that I'm at the next one, and food, and make sure that I'm at the next one to take advantage of the CEUs and the food as well. So congratulations to you. I certainly keep up the good work. I want to connect you with Mr. Mahingabu, because in speaking with Mr. Mahingabu, he is doing a lot of advocacy work around our refugee students. He and I had a conversation recently about how the district can better support our refugee students. And so I certainly want to make that connection between the two of you, because the work that he's doing and the work that you do here in the district, I think matches. And I want Mr. Mahingabu to be able to use this opportunity to work with you to see how the district interacts with refugee students as well. So, at some point, I'd love to have the two of you sit down and trade contact information, because what he's doing out in the community for the refugee students, I think can certainly be a benefit to you in terms of how we support them as well. So certainly want to make that connection.
Absolutely. We've actually been starting, we've seen a large number of Afghani students coming into the district, and we are, the MLL office is right now working on a plan to support schools, to help support, their transition into the school. So thank you. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You might be thinking, hopefully later on, like, oh gosh, what did he do? We're going to be asking you for a lot of stuff.
He's a young man with a lot of energy.
All right. I don't know.
Yeah. That concludes my comments. I'm opening it up to my colleagues for any questions or comments for Ms. Stewart.
Mr. I just want to say that your enthusiasm is palpable, and I know how much time and effort and energy went into planning this event, and I want to thank you, because just seeing the social workers and psychologists and counselors there and how they were collaborating and excited about the community was like a real therapeutic experience for me. So thank you for this hard work. I don't know when you ever sleep.
I don't, but I do have to say though, because I have the mic, I'm so blessed to have such phenomenal teams in all of my departments, and I can't not be here and not say thank you to all of them. They work so tirelessly behind the scenes and doing so much work to support all of these departments. So I just want to say public thank you to all of them, because they all just, every single one of them just works so hard to support students, families, and staff of PPSD. So I'm here representing them, but I could not be here doing what I do without my teams. So I just want to make sure I say that.
Great. Mr. Stevens, did you want to jump in?
Yes, really quick. Dr. Goldberg said, Sandy, don't sleep. I always tell her, you gotta get out the office and go home. Everyone didn't argue. The wellness office is great. Sandy also is very responsive to her emails. If you ever need anything from Sandy, she would definitely respond. So in my advisory capacity, I would ask that Dr. Montañez and Senior Advisor Joan, if by July 1st, we can remove interim from her role and make her permanent, I think that would be greatly appreciated. I don't think anyone from the board would argue that. My 2 cents.
And on that note, is there any additional comments or questions by board members? I think Ms. Stewart, I echo Stephen's sentiment. Certainly, you certainly earned it.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, that concludes our presentation portion of tonight's meeting, which brings us to our next item, executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A2 litigation. This requires a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
We have a motion, we need a motion.
A motion.
So moved.
Motion moved, seconded by Dr. Goldberg, and then we go to the roll call. Yeah, the roll. Mr. Clerk.
President Thomas?
Aye.
Vice President Garcia?
Aye.
Secretary, Mr. Santel?
Aye.
Mr. Stevens? Aye. Dr. Goldberg?
Aye.
Vice President Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Nunes? Aye. And Mr. Mahanuba?
Aye. The ayes have it. We stand in executive session.
Just right here.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one it is.